Because you ask it in the form of a question.
Osterhövel. That means cheese slicer. It does.
It does.
It does. I'm moving my camera. Hi, everybody. I moved it too far. I gotta move it back again. That way. I had it, but then I didn't have it.
Now I'm over here.
Nope.
Move
Okay.
it back. There we go.
Which way? Where?
No.
Where should it go?
Move your
body.
body.
What?
Hold on, Kiki, put half your face.
Oh, I'll be a half of Blair's face.
Oh, wow. New human.
Not having it mirrored
We have
is
a
really
new
hard.
guest
There we go.
host producer lady.
All right, do it again. I fixed it. I'm straight now.
I keep moving the wrong way. It's hard.
It
This
is
should
really
be-
hard. How's that?
Wow. Oh, it's like two of my favorite people at once.
Okay.
No.
It's time for a show, everyone.
Oh boy, this is either going to be a really great show or oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I may or may not be entirely losing my mind as a result
Aren't
of
we all?
staying indoors because of the pandemic and now the wildfire smoke that has made the air in the Willamette Valley the worst in the entire world during the last week. But we're here. We're doing a show. Oh, we are doing a show. Are you ready for it? Are you ready for it? We are silly hosts tonight. Yes, we are. And apparently we all look and sound great. Thank you, Fada. A bad echo? Why do I have a bad echo? What, really?
I'm not hearing it.
I'm not hearing an echo either.
Really? I don't hear, well, I mean, I never hear it when there's something wrong with me. People have to let me know these things. Fada
does
says
anyone
bad
else?
echo.
Oh, yeah,
Identity 4 says no echo.
Fada, maybe it's you. Maybe it's your
Shubru says no echo.
audio on your end.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it.
Do you have it?
That's odd.
Are you listening to the show in two places, Fada?
But then how come he would only hear it from Dr. Kiki? Maybe it's only because Dr. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I tell you what, folks.
A little reverb? Why do I have reverb? I shouldn't
Just
have
to add a
reverb.
little
You're not
timbre to your
loud.
voice.
You're
Nothing else
the same
is
as
turned on.
Justin.
I always put my voice through a Fender amp, an old Spring style. Give myself
Thunder
that surf
Beaver, it's
guitar.
It's not reverb. It's just my vocal fry.
Oh, totally.
Totally. I'm fine now. Okay, great. We will do the show, everybody. We're going to do this. This is the show where we record the This Week in Science podcast. We're a little silly before. We might be a little silly after. We may have conversations. We might even be silly during the show. But what comes out in the podcast is usually similar, but not exactly the same to what ends up here in the YouTubes. So you here on YouTube are watching the original version of This Week in Science. It's time for us to start the show. We're ready to go. In a 3, 2, where's my mouse? 1. I don't want, wait, hold on. 1. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 791, recorded on Wednesday, September 16th, 2020. How long will this last? Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight we will fill your head with life, time, and venom. But first...
Disclaimer. Humans have had a good run on planet Earth. Yes, there are a multitude of life forms that have persisted much longer than the human blip upon the scene of life, but there have likely been few life forms that have dramatically affected the lives of so many other life forms as humans have done. And while humans are having their moment now, at the height of science, at the height of technology, at the height of agriculture, at the height of economy, at the height of communication, collaboration, interconnectivity, they're also at the very height of hubris, in thinking that the world belongs to them and will so remain undeterred by their activities. Humans are but one form of life on this earth, the after effect of a recent adaptation amongst apes, an adaptation that has led to a radical break with nature. And these actions, the actions of these unnatural apes, is having some consequences on the rest of the inhabitants here. It is only a matter of time before these consequences become too great to bear, a time when all of human history will be but evidenced in ocean trash and atmospheric carbon. A time when all of humanity's accomplishments of tech will lay as artifacts under dirt and under sea. A time when all of science will be, as all lost species, extinct and forgotten. A time when all of art and culture is discarded into the entropic decay of time. A time when all the roads laid will lead from cities devoured by nature to bridges that do not span the farther shore. A time when everything they held as human and everything they knew about the universe is simply plowed under. 1,000,000 years gone from the surface of the earth, when all of human history is but a dream, the only thing worth remembering about them will be This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science. What's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science.
A good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back again to talk about science because we love it. It gives us energy. It makes our curiosity thrive. It fills us with joy for the world. You know, and we all need that, especially in these days, which are so difficult. It's nice to have something. We got to have something that brings us joy. And I hope this show will bring you joy because we have a lot of fun science to talk about. This week, I have stories about whale blubber brains and venomous plants.
Blubber brains. Oh, wait, where'd my stories go? I have some also. What have
do
I
you
got?
have, Justin?
I've got orcas under attack, life on Venus, question mark, ancient bear find in California Channel Islands, and why boiled stew might have been a thing humans ate before they invented fire.
Boiled
I think you're
stew.
missing something there, but I look forward to hearing it.
We'll find out. We will definitely find out. Blair, what's in the animal corner?
Oh, I have magnetic bacteria, and then also psychic worms and chimps.
Wait, what?
Just a story about chimps. Don't worry about it. We'll get to
Wait.
Chimps onto the psychic worms and the bacteria.
because they're interesting.
Wait, what?
Can we just start with that? I'm like, I want to hear that now.
Oh, well, you have to wait.
Gotta
What,
wait
chimps?
until
you want
the
to
animal
hear the
corner.
chimps. You want that right away,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That
yeah.
was the
No.
Oh,
Second
okay.
word. Second
Okay.
word.
All right, we'll get there.
The headline of the week.
Oh, fun things are coming up for sure. As we jump into the show here, I want to remind you that subscribing to the TWIS podcast on your favorite podcast platform is the best way that you can get TWIS every week if you're not already subscribed. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. Look for This Week in Science, places where podcasts and videos are found, or visit TWIS, TWIS, twis.org. Let's get into the science. Let the dribble begin. Okay, Justin, start us off. What happened this week? What was the big announcement?
Life was found on Mars.
No.
No,
No,
not Mars.
no.
Venus. Is it Venus? Now I'm
Yeah,
confused.
Nope.
it
It's
was
on
Venus.
both. Isn't it both planets got life this week?
Nope.
Yes.
No.
Life on Mars,
No.
not Mars. Venus.
No.
Venus?
But we don't know. No.
This is a science show, so maybe let's back. I know I saw those headlines a million
Okay,
Can we
times.
just talk
okay.
about
last
what
week.
was really discovered?
Well, yeah, what
Okay.
actually this is our role, right? Is people see the headline on their social media that says there's life on Venus. Oh my god, there's aliens. It's our job to actually explain what happened. So what happened?
So, okay.
Uh,
I will. That's the headline. Now everybody's listening. Now we take it away. See, that's how it works. Well, sort of. Maybe not. An international team of astronomers have discovered signs of life on Venus. Signs of life. What does a sign of life mean? Well, in this case, it's molecules. Molecules in the atmosphere that here on Earth are produced industrially or by microbes and no other way. There's no other natural formation of the molecule. It's phosphine. It's the only way that it has been known to have been created here on this planet. Now, what's interesting about this is it's being found in the high atmosphere, the clouds of Venus. So the clouds of Venus are one place on Venus that astronomers have in the past postulated the possibility for microbial life to exist.
Yeah.
The surface of the planet is a bit warm.
a bit.
That's a bit warm.
Just a bit.
Even for an extremophile, it's 864 degrees Fahrenheit. And I think that would blah, 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 460 something Celsius. It's
Not
hot
just
no matter
hot,
which.
but it's also high pressure too. I mean, remember the
Yes.
last probe we sent to Venus? What happened to that?
Oh, I don't know. What happened?
It was crushed and melted. It lived on the surface and was able to send back pictures for
Help!
just a short period of time, and then the planet destroyed it.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's a
Venus
multi-million
doesn't
dollar
want us.
probe to go get melted and crushed. This is good.
Yeah. Yeah, melted and crushed.
Yeah.
It didn't
So this
survive
is a,
very well.
but it's a pretty good hit. Professor Jane Greaves, excuse me. This was an experiment made out of pure curiosity. They had this powerful, the Atacama large millimeter submillimeter array was used, as well as what is the other one? The James Clerk Maxwell telescope as well. So they got a hit with the James Clerk Maxwell telescope. And because they had such a strong hit for this phosphine, because this is such an interesting find, they were allowed to jump on to the Atacama large millimeter array as well.
ALMA, yes.
ALMA, which is 45 telescopes, is part of that array, because they got the initial hit. And the second look confirmed the first hit. So we got two hits. So Greaves was basically looking... had this opportunity to do some research, and just thought they would just be able to rule out extreme scenarios like clouds being stuffed with organisms.
Microbes.
Yes. And then we got the first hints of phosphine in Venus's spectrum. It was a shock. This is one of those telltale molecules that you might look for when looking for life. So it doesn't mean we found microbes, obviously, but it does look like it's one of those things. So
the other side of this, though, is we've found signature for phosphine in Jupiter's atmosphere before. And we do not expect there to be microbes in Jupiter's atmosphere. We have postulated about Venus because maybe at one point it was occupied by life. Maybe life did evolve there a little bit, but then it went the greenhouse route and got too hot and gassy. And
by the
maybe,
way,
and then
lesson for all of you, right? Lesson for anyone listening.
Don't get too hot.
Greenhouse
gassy?
gas
Oh, okay.
effect can run away
yes,
with you.
and
with
run
a
away
planet.
with you. Yes.
Venus had an atmosphere. Greenhouse got run away. Now it is 800 and something boiling probe.
Now it Now it
surface.
has an even hotter insulating blanket.
Yes.
So the phosphine here on Earth, it's either industrial produced through known chemical I keep thinking equations, but reactions. But and we know it as a sign of life in certain life biological chemical reactions. So there's no industry. They didn't find any of evidence of those known chemical reactions that would.
If they found an industry, we wouldn't even be talking about the hint of maybe microbes in the atmosphere.
But they didn't find those non-organic sources. They didn't. And so they've got this phosphine, but they can't explain it by any method of making phosphine that is known here on Earth. So is there another way to make it? Is the question.
And that's part of the other thing. Like they even sort of looked at if there was any like lightning strikes and certain chemicals being present and different potential ways that they could simulate the industrial effect. And they couldn't come within many magnitudes of the amount that they're seeing there. They could not come up with a natural way for this to occur. There's ways that you could get this molecule to form under some conditions, possibly, but nothing to the levels of what they saw in the atmosphere. So it's definitely something that can give us good cause to go and take another closer look.
Yeah, and this is exciting because like you said, this has been postulated before, and there has been the idea lofted of sending drones or little helicopters that would be robots that could go sample the atmosphere of Venus. So the way that we send stuff to the surface of Mars to go dig in the dirt, we would send basically, drones to go fly around in the atmosphere of Venus and collect air samples and send information back.
Don't get crushed. Don't get melted. Just do a
Don't get crushed, don't get melted.
And
be on your way.
It's possible up in the upper atmosphere. Not quite as hot, not as dense, very acidic though, which is still another aspect of, it's still not an incredibly hospitable environment, but we'll see. We should do it. We should send a helicopter to Venus. Let's do it.
And it's just slightly less gravity than the planet Earth. So it's not like it's not the pressures being caused by this massive gravity or anything. This is not, you're not going to do a flyby and get if you can fly it in this atmosphere, you should be able to survive that atmosphere just fine and move around and then maybe leave again. Maybe a return mission kind of a thing. Yeah. Go in, sample, bring it back.
I love these ideas.
Came from Venus.
Let's get this technology going. What?
The moral of this story is just, once again, we're not that special.
I think we're very special.
In the solar system, we're sharing things, of course, right? And so there's got to be stuff kind of in common with different planets in our own solar system, but also just like especially these things that we keep identifying that are like, okay, this is the thing that we need to look for life. So, oh no, it's over there too. We're not that special. We need to find that thing that makes life so extra special that we can't find on other planets that don't have life. And I think that's more what this is about, right?
We haven't found life anywhere else yet, though. Right. So this is,
So we're just narrowing down the list. So we're like, okay, this is another thing, not an indicator of life, potentially. If Venus doesn't have life, then it's not an indicator. Move on to the next thing.
Right. And that's a great point, actually, which if we can knock off these signals and particular chemical signatures as not indicative of life, then that makes it easier to look at the atmospheres of exoplanets outside our solar system. Yeah, totally. You're right. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So it's exciting news. It has been a little sensationalized this week, but it is exciting nonetheless. And I do hope we send helicopters to Venus. Moving on to Mars. Just going to keep going there. Moving on to Mars, we all want that irrefutable evidence of life on Mars. Well, a new paper out of Scientific Reports doesn't have it. Called constraining the preservation of organic compounds in Mars analog non-trinites after exposure to acid and alkaline fluids. They pretty much say, hey, you're digging in the surface dirt of Mars, which has probably been exposed to a bunch of acidic and alkaline solutions, which, if there were life in the surface dirt of Mars, it was probably degraded by all that acid and alkalinity. So you're probably not going to find it if you're looking there. So that's the take-home message from the story. Meh, meh.
Well,
yeah, but we're the Perseverance rover, which is launched and on its way to Mars, is going to land at the Jezero crater in February of 2021. It ran away from pandemic world. It's persevering on Mars.
With you.
It's going to be collecting the samples, but we'll see if we find anything.
Did I just hear that right?
What?
Did you say February?
February.
That's how you spell it, man.
I know, but that's not how you say it.
Yeah, Wednesday also.
Wednesday? That's just not. Or is it? No, my question immediately becomes, or is it? Have I been doing that differently than everybody else and just never caught it before? It's also possible.
I have a tendency to pronounce things like February.
It's the opposite of the Bay Area accent, where you squish everything together and say it really fast. Instead, you're just announcing everything.
February.
Mid-Atlantic
February, Wednesday. Yes. Okay, Blair, tell me a story. It's Wednesday.
Let's talk about magnetic bacteria. This is a study out of University of Central Florida looking at, once again, the age-old question, how do animals navigate in the world? And we've talked a bunch about pigeons mainly, and does it have to do with magnetic fields? Is it their inner ear hairs? Is it some other magnetic cell in their head? There's a bunch of different theories. Mm-hmm. But this new one, let's throw another one on the pile, is that it actually is magnetic bacteria. This is researchers from University of Central Florida and combined with researchers from the United Kingdom and Israel together worked on a study looking at the magnetic sense of direction that sea turtles get, birds, fish, pigeons, salmon. These are the ones we've talked about before. And it coming from a symbiotic relationship with magnetotactic bacteria. So this is influenced by magnetic fields, so bacteria that respond to magnetic fields, including the Earth's. And so what they did is they actually looked at one of the largest genetic databases in the world of microbes, known as the Metagenomic Rapid Annotations Using Subsystems Technology database. And they looked at the presence of magnetotactic bacteria that had been found in animal samples. So I guess they had previously, lots of people have looked at bacteria in individuals, but this kind of across species thing is done a little bit, but they haven't really looked at these magnetotactic bacteria across species. And so they have found that there appears to be a correlation between their presence and animals that are good at this kind of wild sense of direction related to migration, or in the case of sea turtles and salmon, returning to where they were born, all this kind of crazy stuff. So what I think I love about this story, I thought this is going to be quick, but I just love this story so much. Researchers don't know where they live in the animal. They have no idea.
Yeah.
So
how would that work?
Yeah, their guess is that it's associated with nervous tissue, which would make sense. You want to have the direct comm line into the brain.
Don't need to.
So
we got microbiome can converse through other channels.
But I think it would be the quickest possible response would be to be related to the nervous tissue. So their current idea is that it has to do with the eye or the brain, but they actually really don't know. And so they do think that this could be used. I kind of pulled this out of the Animal Corner because it has a lot of cool potential uses for humans. So this could affect our own navigation. This could help us look at modifications to our own environment in magnetic fields. When we do things like construct power lines, we could have this bacteria around to help us see what's going on. It could also help develop therapies that related to magnetism for drug delivery. And I just like to think that you could maybe infect yourself with this bacteria and have just the best sense of direction.
Yeah. So isn't this extremely easy to test? Don't you just get like homing pigeons and feed them antibiotics until you've knocked out their system and see if they can find their way home?
Right.
I mean, isn't it that easy?
You could do that.
So the next step is to see if there is a direct relationship between kind of like bacterial load or whatever and navigation. So that's the next step. And then after that, they can kind of try to figure out how it works. And then from there, how we could harness it. So it's many, many steps away still, but this is a new theory. And it does, not everyone's convinced, but it's an interesting idea.
I would start with taking a pigeon that used to be able to find its way home, knocking out its bacterial load, and then seeing if it can do it again.
But you have to find where it is, because if this bacteria lives in the brain, then you have to be really careful with how you're administering antibiotics because of, the blood-brain barrier, which we know really is like, questionable now, but still it'd be much harder to knock it all out.
You can at least isolate then maybe. Here's where not to look.
The idea of bacteria in the brain, I mean, it could happen, but it doesn't seem that it would happen. It would happen individually, but potentially, but not across species. Like entire populations being infected in the brain with bacteria,
unless it's some weird symbiotic thing from ancient dinosaur.
Like they're born with it. Like it develops as they grow from.
Just the brain, the mammalian brain is encased in a way that is meant to protect it from bacterial parasites and other, we hear occasionally about people inhaling water from a really warm pond at the end of the summer and getting a brain-eating parasite because the amoeba went up their nose. And
or using a neti pot.
Using a neti pot, exactly. Not sterilizing the water. So, this is a very interesting question to me. Would the bacteria potentially be on the optic nerve itself, like in behind the eyes? Potentially,
I don't think it needs to be. I
think you're right. I think you're right, Justin. That if you could use antibiotics and knock out the sense of direction, I know antibiotics can knock out your sense of smell. So two things there. First of all, I don't think it needs that absolute direct connection of being connected to a nerve. I mean, that's where we've been looking, in the beak, the eyes, in the brain. That's the direction. I think you can have a gut feeling of where north is, and that communication can happen fast enough to gut to brain. We know it affects human behavior in quick time. The other thing is, don't know.
The gut isn't really designed to allow bacteria to transfer from the gut into the bloodstream, but it happens all the time. And we've discovered that there's times when the body grabs bacteria and transports it through the gut intentionally into the bloodstream. So if there is something that the body's looking for in a bird that does want to transport it to the brain, it will have carriers that will bring it there. I mean, this is something that will have evolved for it to transport things with the right stimuli and attachment.
So
it's possibly
the thing here is that anything's possible until you do the science to prove that it's not possible and probable. Very different things. Also,
absolutely. But I mean, we've seen first step evidence of this.
And on top of it, there's also the bias of what scientists are looking for. So potentially, just having this hypothesis out there will allow scientists to look in places where they haven't thought to look before, which I think is exciting. Anyway, very interesting. A new study published in Science Advances by neuroscientists out of Florida Atlantic University's Charles E. Schmidt College of Science and Harriet L. Wilkes Honors College, collaborating with Bar Ilan University, Ramat Gan in Israel. So many collaborations. It's wonderful. These researchers looked at blind cavefish. I love these, following on the heels of Justin's cavefish story last week. This study goes into the brains of cavefish, as opposed to looking at the physical anatomy of the body, as opposed to looking at the behavior of blind cavefish, of which there are many species, and they seem to have very uniquely adapted behaviors. These researchers looked at the brains of several species of Mexican tetras, Acetonax mexicanus, which comprises river-dwelling surface fish and also many independently evolved populations of blind cavefish. Checked out their brains and the brain activity and found that looking at 18 anatomical regions across the brain and looking at the neural activity across them, they were able to generate whole brain atlases to be able to do a complete comparative brain-wide study of the variation between the different species. And they said, yeah, these fish have behavioral differences that are supported by changes in the brain, that there are physical changes in the brain and also changes to the wiring, the neural circuits that are involved, and the neurotransmitters that get released. So there are lots of differences that characterize the brain and behavior differences between the species. And that now they have the opportunity to look at all of these things from an evolutionary context. And they really did see that by looking at all of these different brains, that the cavefish, for the most part, derived very unique adaptations for their behavioral traits, that they weren't sharing these things, that they were actually using what they had from the basics, but then going off in completely different directions.
Gravitational.
And talking about fish, and my cat decided to come up for a visit.
I would like this graphic on loop, please.
Yes, on loop for the rest of the night.
It looks like a lava lamp.
It's fish brains.
It's great. It's color-coded fish brains.
Yep. And while there are certain similarities, there are definitely lots and lots and lots and lots of differences. Yes. Justin, what else do you have going on here?
I have a story that I'm going to tell you the first part of now, and then we'll get into it more in the second half.
Okay.
But we've been talking about whether or not we can find life out there in the universe, in the solar system, even. What if we found intelligent life? What if we found life that we could communicate with? And that life asked us to stay away. Well,
go away. We don't want any.
We wouldn't.
It's happening.
The no solicitors sign on my front door.
It's happening here on Earth. This is over the past few months, a pod of orcas have been defending their waters off the coast of Spain and Portugal. And it started harmlessly enough. This is sort of the south of France, the Gibraltar Strait, that sort of entrance below Spain into the Mediterranean waters. July 20th, near the port of Barbate, Spain, a yacht is followed by a pod of orca. According to the yacht's captain, one individual had hold of the rudder and stopped us moving the boat, he says. It's the first time I'd seen him do that. July 22nd, 34-foot yacht is struck 9:30 at night by orca, knocking out its steering cables, then lifting and pushing the vessel around in the water for 15 minutes until it is turned 180 degrees off course. Turned it right around. 2.5 hours later, a couple traveling in their 50-foot boat, same area, suddenly come to a halt in the waters off that coast and think they have been caught in a fishing net. Go up there with the flashlights and see orca swimming all around the boat. They now discover that the boat is pointing in the opposite direction that they were traveling. They tried to correct course several times, but each time the orca redirected them back in the direction from which they had come. They described the orcas as at times attempting to lift the boat out of the water. The encounter lasted 20 minutes. The rudder was damaged, but worked just well enough to steer them back to port. The next day, Let's see. Yeah, the next day, July 23rd, a 40-foot boat in same area, pod of at least 4 orcas. It's probably the same pod of they think about 9 of them that are part of this group. This pod of at least 4 orcas had brought a craft, a 40-foot boat, to a halt by grabbing the rudder until it finally broke. Then it kind of escalated. Over the next 50 minutes, the orca began heading out 80 feet, turning around and ramming the boat at full speed, eventually spinning the yacht 120 degrees. July 29th, off Cape Trafalgar, which is about 8 miles.
Trafalgar.
Yeah.
Trafalgar, thank you.
Yeah.
8 miles to the west. Orca pod in action again. This time a 46-foot boat had its rudder destroyed and then was rammed for over an hour, disabling the engines and turning them 180 degrees off course. Upon closer investigation after rescue, teeth marks were evidenced on the bottom of the vessel and the keel. A sailor, who happens to be a biology graduate, who's also going to be studying marine biology soon, and has decided to study the orca of this region after this event, this girl from New Zealand, described a deafening noise. She's down underneath the boat. She's inside the boat. Deafening noises they communicated, whistling to each other. It was so loud that we had to shout, adding the attacks felt totally orchestrated. August 30th.
Orchestrated.
August 30th. French flagged vessel near Vigo. This is northwest of Spain now. This is 500 miles away. This is later, but this is 500 miles away from the initial encounters. Radios the Coast Guard saying they are under attack from killer whales. Ship remains functional, though the hull bore evidence of orcas rubbing up against it. The same day, 80 miles south of that, a Spanish naval yacht, Merfac, lost its rudder to a killer whale encounter. That encounter was caught on video. In the video, sailors can be heard calling the orca a bad name in Spanish as it surfaces alongside the vessel, immediately followed by that orca turning around, grabbing the rudder, and removing it. Brilliant. Make fun of the apex predator in the ocean, you silly humans. September 11th, 150 miles north of that Merfac encounter, off A Coruña, I don't know, Spain, a 36-foot boat encounter with orca, which rams the stern about 15 times. The boat lost its steering and needed to be towed back to harbor. So this was just Monday. Spain's Maritime Rescue Service warned vessels in the area off the coast of Spain that to beware of the presence of orcas and ask sailors to keep their distance, give them lots of leeway, and inform the Coast Guard, although it does seem as though these orca are pursuing the boats and targeting them and working on them in an orchestrated way. This is, of course, they believe this is the same pod all the way through, that this is one pod of orcas that is doing this behavior. They are turning, if they had turned one of the boats around 180 degrees, you might go, oh, well, that's interesting, or that just happened to be a coincidence. They are turning these boats like, nope, you're going that way, buddy. Go back where you came from. Get out of our waters. So there's a bunch of things that may have led up to this, and there's some theories as to what's triggered this pod to begin this behavior. But we can get to that in the second half.
Ooh, teasing it for the second half. We're going to talk about, because that actually now we know what the orcas are doing. Why are they doing it? Okay, we'll talk about that. Blair, you better put that in your back pocket, and we'll be talking about it later. I have one last story for our quick stories at the start about whales, about a good news, kind of. Researchers wanted to find out how many persistent organic pollutants are hanging out in Antarctica and affecting the health of animals there. Oh, hey, whales, they go swimming around a lot and they eat a lot of krill and other food that picks up those pollutants and then transfers them to the blubber of the whales. So they went to Ecuador and Mozambique, and they sampled about 150 humpback whales and other southern whales to get a look at what kind of a pollutant load, contaminant load, was in their bodies. And while they did find traces of DDT and other persistent pollutants like pesticides that are used on wheat fields, many pesticides that are supposedly banned today in their bloodstream, in their blubber, they found that it wasn't actually as much as in other areas of the world. So although pesticides and these persistent pesticides, these pollutants, are making it to the Antarctic waters, they are not yet at a level that is considered dangerous to whales. So still a little bit of good news, even though these things are still in use and they're affecting the world. It's not that bad.
So, if I may, quick question. I know
Yes.
this is quick stories, but these are all baleen whales, right? These are all whales that are like filter feeders. So, if you looked at toothed whales that are predators, you might actually find a pretty different response because of biomagnification. So these guys are eating the very bottom of the food chain. So there's not opportunity for it to accumulate a whole lot. But if you had an animal like fish that ate krill and then seals that ate fish and then whales that ate the seal, then they might have a much bigger load of that stuff. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good
point. For the baleen, for the humpbacks, they are not the canary in the coal mine that they are looking for. No. I'll take it as good news for right now.
But because it's the ocean. If you put canaries in the ocean, you would think the ocean was already toxic. Because they wouldn't.
They wouldn't have lasted. Canaries would not last very long in the ocean.
They would be better in the They'd be better in the.
This is toxic dihydrogen monoxide everywhere.
Oh no! Glub 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 glub. If you just tuned in, you are listening to This Week in Science. If you are interested in a TWIS shirt or mug or pillow or apron or face mask, we have all sorts of TWIS products available in our Zazzle store. Head over to twis.org, click on that Zazzle link, find something to make your TWISy heart happy, and support TWIS at the same time. Time for our COVID update.
Woo!
Bad news. It's all bad news.
It is. So I interviewed a public health researcher for Sigma Xi, the scientific professional organization, last Friday, and he's working at a fairly high level of on the informational side and research side of what's going on, and he's of the mind that this virus is going to be with us in one way or another forever. So we better start kind of putting that into our mindset. Right now, the U.S. is averaging 35,752 new cases and 772 deaths per day. However,
cut the deaths almost in half from the. It's so great news. So much better than the awful that we were doing before. Such a silver lining.
Yeah, I hear your sarcasm. However, with school back in session, cases are increasing again, even as reported testing is decreasing. Test positivity is up from 4.8% to 6.1% over the last few days, and test volume is down below 600,000 tests. A majority of COVID-19 outbreak hotspots are currently college towns, which may or may not be correlation.
Well, it does relate back to the science of adolescence and risk taking.
Yes.
That actually that age range is like the most likely to take risks that could kill you. So it kind of tracks.
It does kind of tracks a little bit. And if the news is any indicator, many of these universities are giving lots of citations to their students for flaunting the rules related to COVID. All right. Even while that is going on, researchers are trying their darndest to find ways to prevent and treat this terrible disease, the cause of the pandemic we're in the midst of. And University of Pittsburgh researchers have discovered a teeny tiny bit of protein called AB8, which is actually a little tiny immunoglobulin. I can't say the word immunoglobulin. There we go. Immunoglobulin-based antibody. So it's based on antibodies that our blood creates. They took blood and they put the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein into the blood and then looked to see what the immune cells in the blood came up with. And so they found a whole bunch of little tiny antibody proteins, these immunoglobulins. And this AB8 was the smallest, but also one of the most effective. And they've now tested it on mice and hamsters, and they were able to very well prevent and also treat infection with SARS-CoV-2 in these animals. And the exciting thing is because it's a tiny little virus, AB8 could be fairly easily delivered, wouldn't have to be delivered in large quantities necessarily, because they found in mice and hamsters that very low concentrations of the protein have a very significant effect. It is a very effective neutralizing agent for the virus. It grabs onto the spike and doesn't allow it to infect cells. Additionally, it does not bind to human cells itself. So there is no possibility that AB8 would be a problem to our body in any way. It would just probably get cleared out after a while. And because it's so tiny, you could inhale it. So it wouldn't have to be a drip injection delivery method. It could be something that is as easy as your allergy medication to be able to take. So very exciting. It's very early on in these stages of manufacturing and getting it along the road to clinical trials, but they are already partnering with a manufacturer and a industrial research organization that can potentially push this out fast as we need it. Yeah. So AB8, put that in your little memory banks as something that's a possibility. Not yet, but maybe out there. Because remember, this virus is going to be with us for a long time, so we're going to need it.
Thank you, America.
Thank you. Thank you, America. Because there's another study that I didn't want to talk about tonight that said pretty much we could have avoided all of this, but we're not going to talk about that because it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, that sounds correct.
It's a little too late to be talking about what could have been done.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what we're going to do moving forward, which masks, huge. CDC director today just was talking with Congress and was like, yeah, so I think a mask is going to protect me better than a vaccine will. Like saying, yeah. So people are masks are the thing. They are the thing. So how do we perceive them? We have these huge questions. Oh my gosh.
Who has questions?
There are people who are angry about being told they have to wear a mask, about, just what it implies about them. And there are identity issues that have somehow been tied into mask wearing. To look into this a little bit, there was a study done in Germany looking at 7,000 German participants, cross-sectional of the population. And they looked at, in the laboratory, this is a simulated situation, not real, but they had people in this study either in you have to wear masks, mandatory group, and another group that's like, oh, it's voluntary. You can choose to wear masks. And then gave them different situations like, oh, you're in a grocery store and somebody's not wearing a mask. What do you do? And then look to see how people responded. And what they found is very interesting. Their results, as encapsulated in their abstract, indicate that a voluntary policy would likely lead to insufficient compliance, would be perceived as less fair, and could intensify stigmatization because people who wear masks are perceived as having greater risk of contracting the disease. And so that gives a greater stigma to the health state of the people wearing masks. There's also the opposite. There's also the opposite side of it, which found that was very apparent in the mandatory situation, where they found it to be effective, fair, and socially responsible. Once people were told to wear masks, compliance went up from something on the level of 60% of people, 70% of people, to 96% of people wearing masks once it was mandatory. So there are perception issues at work here that are very interesting and that should be taken into account moving forward, especially as, we're potentially looking at things being at mask policies being applied on a region to region or state to state basis. And so it's something that is, it's a very interesting issue as to how people perceive each other. Once it's voluntary, the idea of mask wearing, when it's voluntary, it's like, you're on my team. And people who see other people wearing masks, like, oh yeah, you're like me. And, there's this social bonding that happens as a result of it. And there's also like social stigmatization to those who are not wearing masks either.
I also
You're not a joiner. You're not a helper. You're not a joiner.
The others. That's how we identify the others. They're not wearing the mask when they should. That's how we know who they are, and we can round them up. Look, here's the thing. I come to an intersection.
Justin.
I come to an intersection. I can tell if there's other cars coming. I have eyes in my head. I'm aware of my surroundings. I shouldn't need to stop at a stop sign if I don't see other cars coming. Yeah, the whole point of having a stop sign that you stop at, even if there's no other cars there, is that we all follow this rule together all the time, and we don't run into each other. We don't guess.
We help each other. Yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking more about how when they first said, okay, now everyone wear masks. I didn't wear a mask every time I went outside because I would I'm gonna run out to take the dog out real quick. And so I'd be like, I'll be right back. Right. And, I usually didn't run into people, but every once in a while there'd be another person on the stairs. I'd be like, oh, dang, I should have my mask. But then they made it very clear in my apartment complex that you could get a fine for not having a mask on in the common areas of the apartment complexes. Okay. All right. So now I put a mask on every time I go outside. And it's just, I've always been with the mask thing ever since they've said that we should. And I still was less compliant when it was optional.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's think about like a seatbelt, like, I'm just going to the store. I don't need to put my seatbelt on. But if there's any streets between the store and there, I could get pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt. So it's just having it be compulsory changes I think even the frequency of how often you do it, even if you're with it.
Yep.
Yeah. However, as I reported a month or so ago, maybe longer, if you're a conservative, you're going to be more likely to break a rule once it's a rule. This is just the seatbelt law. This is this weird thing that they found, that if you have a conservative mindset, you're less likely to wear the seatbelt because it's the law. Or you're more likely to go against the social recommendation.
Interesting.
Why it is that they don't believe
is that true?
Yeah, this was a whole study that this is like a month or two ago. I did.
Okay, I have to go back and look at that again.
Yeah. Conservative mindsets tend to be not like those. Not like the.
But I don't think that's right, because we
not a criminal thing.
Conservative mindsets are. It depends. It really depends on the identity of the conservative, like in which way they're conservative, because there is the accepting of authoritarian instruction, of leadership that's authoritarian. And if in that case, if somebody tells you what to do, you're going to be all for it. But there's the conservative, which is personal freedom conservative, which is going to...
Hang on. They're the same, because what you have to understand is when they follow the authoritarian, the rule is on somebody else, not on them. They follow the authoritarian because the authoritarian is saying, we're going to create these other rules for those people. Yay! I'm going to create one rule for you. No! Rules on the other people? Yeah! No, that's exactly it. It's the same person.
Okay. Oh, that's
called hypocrisy. Anyway.
That's the word. Yeah. Anyway, it's very interesting. And I think in terms of these mandates or voluntary applications of behaviors that can potentially save lives, that will reduce infections, that are they have been shown and will be and are being shown. There are more studies being published every day on how different kinds of masks impair airflow, impair viral transmission. That we are learning more and more every day. But Blair, what did you find? You found one of these studies.
Yes. So actually, this isn't a study. This is a commentary. So that's the first disclaimer I have here, is that it's not a scientific study. It's based on data collected from other studies and just current COVID information. So it's really just a hypothesis at this point. But this was a commentary published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which has a promising theory about the use of masks. Now, I love this. So when we all started, we were like, okay, everybody wear your masks. And then we were like, yeah, everybody wear your mask, but it's for everyone else, to protect them from you, which was a PR nightmare. I feel like it was a huge mistake.
My mask protects you. Your mask protects me.
Huge mistake. But the good news is it's more complicated, and that mask might actually save your life. Let me explain. I'm so excited about this story. Okay, so there's a new theory that universal face mask wearing might actually reduce the severity of COVID-19 and ensure a greater proportion of infections are asymptomatic and increase general immunity. Because, because this is all based on a data set that shows that the amount of virus someone is exposed to at the start of infection, the infectious dose, may determine not only the severity of their illness, but also the mortality rate of patients. How the number of virus that gets in your face can impact whether you're asymptomatic, whether you just get a light case, or whether you're on a ventilator but you didn't die. Like it looks like it makes it better. So,
but that makes absolute sense, doesn't it? Because unlike if you get a bacteria, it's going to have a chance to grow, and at some point it's growing and it's doubling and it's doubling and it's doubling and it's doubling. It gets to a point where it's going to infect you as much as it's going to infect you. But with the virus, it's the number of them in the cells that are taking over machinery in your cells that are then expulsing. So it's going to have how much you start with determines how rapidly the onset is going to be.
But this
and how many cells are infected.
This is where this gets crazy. There is also new data suggesting that the immune response from COVID is equally as strong from a mild or asymptomatic infection as from a troublesome infection. So knowing that, combining those two pieces of information, wearing a mask could actually increase immunity overall in a population. Because if you are getting exposed to COVID, they're wearing a mask and I'm wearing a mask, then way less virus ends up in my body, and my immune system might actually build antibody short-term for that virus without ever getting sick. So
what you're saying is we should have these micro-dosing parties where somebody with COVID wears a mask.
What I'm saying is everyone should wear a mask. Back to what we were just talking about. Mask mandate. A mask mandate could create temporary immunity while we create a vaccine. So this starts to make sense.
Really interesting idea. Yeah.
So for example, this is not like I didn't do any statistics on this at all, but anecdotally, California has had very, very strict mask rules in their cities, in their big cities. But they also have been reopening, and there's been questions about like, oh, is this a good idea? Not to mention the peaceful protests that occurred. People were wearing masks, right?
Yep.
And outdoors.
So knowing all this contributes to this idea. Like, why is California's rate still dropping if we are opening up and we're not at the kind of prescribed percentage rate that we're supposed to be at? And this might be why, because California might be really, really, really good at enforcing and promoting mask wearing and creating this temporary immunity and more common asymptomatic infections in the community. So again, this was an article just kind of proposing an idea based on some data that was polled. So this is totally correlative, but I think it is so exciting. And I think this means we have to change our conversation again and start to indicate that mask protects you.
Well, the mask protects everyone because you breathe out, the air goes less distance. It's reducing the amount of virus potentially that makes it out past the mask, out into the air. And if you're breathing in, same thing. The airflow is less, virus is less. My mask protects you and me.
Exactly.
I am though weary of the extrapolation of anything that's being done statewide being too closely associated with the thing that's being done. I like it with the masks. It makes sense, that correlation.
That was totally just me being anecdotal because our numbers are not rising as fast as they should be considering how we're reopening. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yet. So the thing in the back of my mind is Florida.
Totally.
Florida congratulated itself, patted itself on the back for doing such a great job, even though they had done nothing, and congratulated themselves into becoming the hot spot in the nation. There's been other places where like, hey, we've reopened schools and haven't had a problem. And then they had, it's a couple of weeks later, they have these outbreaks. And then they're like, oh, maybe it was because of the schools and we did have a problem and we just thought we didn't because that's.
Yes, but also both of those, like you talked about some of these schools, the majority of the states where these schools have been, but also Florida, when they did this exact thing, they did not have mask mandates.
No. I totally agree that the masks should be part of it. I wear mine happily. Yeah, all the time. Absolutely.
Happily, we go outside, sing Kumbaya-esque, my friends. Kumbaya.
Bill Sater says masks also protect from bad breath.
Mm-hmm. It sure does.
Actually, it turns out it can also help you help your friends if you have bad breath and didn't know it.
Yeah.
That's
Brush
right.
your teeth, people.
I can eat
Brush
all
your
the
teeth, wear your
garlic I
mask.
want now.
Who wants to eat garlic?
I do.
It's so good, but so bad. This is This Week in Science. Want to help TWIS grow? Get a friend to listen today. Then get them to subscribe. That would be awesome. All right. Is it that time? It's time in our show that we love to call Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
What you got, Blair?
I have those psychic worms. Well, that was kind of false advertising. I have worms.
What do you mean? No, you can't be false
The
advertising.
worms know that you're talking about.
Tell me about
I
psychic worms. Tell me about psychic worms.
This is about our friend C. elegans or Cairnorhabditis elegans. C. elegans is fine.
That's why they call it C. elegans.
Yeah. It's a microscopic roundworm. They're studied to death, probably quite literally. We know a lot about them. We know their neurons, their muscle cells, their intestinal cells, the identity of every cell in their body. We also know the order in which those cells arrive, but there's still something that's pretty wild about these worms that needed to be studied. So this is out of Princeton University. And this research question comes from the fact that they feed on bacteria, Pseudomonas aeruginosa. And under certain environmental conditions, this bacteria can become pathogenic. It can sicken the worms. So something about it changes and it gives them a terrible little tummy ache. I don't know how it makes them sick, but it makes them sick. And so when mothers are made ill, or I'm going to say mothers because they're hermaphrodites, but when parent worms are made ill, they actually learn to avoid that bacteria because the environment in which they live is now bad for that. Like that bacteria becomes toxic in that environment. So like no more of this stuff for the rest of my life. What gets interesting is that their offspring their grandchildren and their great-great-grandchildren also avoid that bacteria.
Wow.
But after 4 generations, this, what they call transgenerational avoidance behavior, disappears, letting the worms return to feeding on the bacteria. Because maybe after 4 generations, things have gotten better and the bacteria is palatable again. I don't know. They wanted to see what the mechanism was here. How are these worms avoiding the bacteria? Like, are they tasting it and going, no? And then how are they telling these multiple generations to stay away from this bacteria? So first, they looked at other types of pathogenic bacteria, did not cause avoidance. So this behavior is specific to that animal, or to that bacteria. It's not just that if they eat something that makes them sick, they'll avoid it after that. No, it's just this one bacteria. So they also found that it all comes from one particular worm neuron. One neuron tells them not to eat that stuff.
That's great.
So how does this work? How does it get how do they tell their brain not to eat it? How did the generations find out? So they fed worms with a harmless bacteria that had been spiked with different materials isolated from the pathogenic bacteria. And they found that it has to do with RNA. So they tested DNA, they tested the messenger RNAs and small RNAs. Those don't code for proteins, but instead they perform regulatory functions in cells, like they promote the destruction of messenger RNAs, for example. So when it came down to it, it was the small RNAs in the bacteria that was telling the worms not to eat them. So it didn't have to do with taste. It didn't have to do with anything produced when they eat it. No metabolites, nothing like that. It was just the small RNAs that that told them that it was pathogenic. So they found within that a specific small RNA called P11 is the one that causes inherited avoidance. It doesn't make them sick. They just detect P11, and it's enough to make them avoid it and pass on to 4 generations. So how does this happen? Once the worm has eaten the bacteria, P11 is absorbed, processed by the worm intestine, and then finds its way into the egg and sperm. So this is kind of related to what we were talking about before. How do you get bacteria into neurons? So it's passed into eggs and sperm. Again, they're hermaphrodites, so they have both.
This is just this is protein though. This is just, or not even a protein. This is mRNA.
Right. So
tiny bit of thing.
Right.
Yeah,
it's different, but it's a similar pathway, right? So from gut to neuron. So from there, P11 brought to the neuron, it controls the avoidant behavior, and the way they do that is they destroy the worm messenger RNAs that encode for a specific protein called mesoilin. The messenger RNAs prevent this protein from being manufactured, and that causes the avoidance.
So this is a basis now. Now we have a mechanics behind a genetic memory.
Yeah,
indeed.
That's I mean, because it's something we've talked about for so long. How does this happen? What is this multi-generational learning thing? How is this possible?
Yeah.
Now we're seeing mechanism in a worm. Yep. The very basic illustration of how that mechanism of passing on a genetic memory from one generation to the next, let alone 4, might be possible.
And beyond
what stops it though? Why does it stop?
And beyond that, how crazy that the first worm is quote unquote reading small RNA of a pathogen.
Yeah, it also has to survive it. So to pass it. But then the other thing is I don't know enough about how worms reproduce. They're hermaphrodites, but do they also hook up with that? They can with themselves.
They can. Yep.
And okay, because then my whole tree of like how a trait is passed down gets really awkward.
Well, and that might have to do. Yeah, that might have. It's just an infinity size. No.
So how would it fall out then? Is the thing?
So like that if you might have to do with sexual reproduction
because they do both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
Right.
in the is it asexual? What's the one where how's the one where they do it with themselves and have an offspring that's kind of a clone?
They self-fertilize.
They self-fertilize, but do they have? Is it a clone or do they have other material from both the parents that they use to mix it up with? Because if that's the case,
listen to Blair.
Think about your Punnett square, right? So I have brown hair. That means I either have 2 brown hair genes or I have a brown and a blonde, let's say, right? And the blonde would be recessive, which is why you see my brown hair. So if I had a baby with someone who was blonde, as I am wont to do, then there would be a chance that my baby would be blonde because that person has 2 recessive blonde genes, right? So I have like a 1 in 4 chance that I'd have, 2 in 4 chance I'd have brown hair because it's dominant, and 2 in 4 chance that I would have a kid with blonde hair. So that's what's happening with this worm. So if I did asexual reproduction in this case, and I self-fertilized, I could technically have a blonde child.
Yes.
Because of that recessive gene. So no, it would not be a clone.
Okay, perfect. So it's not a clone. So then you can have if the one that encounters and is now going to pass on this trait, it could still encode DNA that doesn't have the trait because I don't know. Yeah,
potentially,
because
but
it could be pulling from.
Because they're also saying it goes straight through to the sperm and egg, in which case it could be present
bypassing
in all versions.
All of those versions.
Right.
And then at some point, then asexual transmission is taking place with a set that is inherited.
Sexual transmission. Yeah.
Doesn't have it. Yeah. Except everything I don't know.
Yep. So that could be it. We don't know. They didn't figure out why it goes away yet. That's a future study.
But maybe the interaction with the molecule has to trigger it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that is. I mean, what I'm interested in now is, okay, we've seen this and we have a mechanism for the worms. We know that there are stress-related changes in, like, what is it, the F2 generation, where if the grandparents were stressed out because of lack of food, then there are changes to the metabolism of not the offspring, but the grandchildren. And this is in mammals, right?
Yeah.
So
humans.
in humans.
That's humans.
So what is happening? So that's the question there is what happens there? Where does it go for a generation?
So I think
what
that's
happens
really
to
the
that
question
mRNA
here.
Yeah.
Is this the method for memories in DNA? Or is it a method?
A method
for memories in DNA.
So one of the ideas I guess behind that is that it has to be pre-puberty humans. So it's probably affecting egg and sperm. That's going to be. I'm assuming the way I've read this is it seems like it is changing the way egg and sperm in their offspring DNA is going to be manufactured, but the offspring still get the genes. I know that's weird, but it's
no, that kind of makes sense, right? Is that like especially females already have a bunch of eggs when they get stressed out, so it doesn't go straight into the eggs, but there's chemical signals that go into their baby, and those eggs are the ones that carry the stuff. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Even though they're still inheriting whatever the last generation was, they're primed to pass a thing on that they didn't have.
Yeah, there are lots of things that work, especially chromosomal imprinting, where one of the 2 chromosomes from the mother and one of the 2 chromosomes from the father get passed along so there's imprinting that's at work, and because one gets silenced, the other one doesn't. So if it's on one version and not the other, it'll get passed or not. This is all very interesting. Very complicated, very fascinating. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking of complications,
Yes, tell us more.
Complicated environments can lead to complicated people or chimps. So this is a study. It was an international team of researchers from Pan-African Program, the Cultured Chimpanzee, and the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology, and more, looking at combined field work and in-depth literature, looking at chimpanzee behavior. So they looked at 46 field sites, and then also they had all of their old data that they were looking at. They looked at 144 chimpanzee social groups, and they found they were looking at environmental conditions related to behavioral diversity and cultural diversity. So you think about behavioral diversity, that's just like how many different personalities do you have, or tactics or ways of acting in a troop. But then you have your cultural diversity. That's could be within the same group or between groups. Do some of them use tools in a particular way, store their tools in a particular way, make tools in particular ways, have different ways of grooming hierarchies within, these are all cultural changes within species. So they found that with environmental diversity comes behavior and cultural diversity. So the more variable your space is, seasonality changes, landscape changes over time, the more kind of plastic behavior comes in that space, which makes sense. You have to kind of adapt to what you're dealing with, and you become more flexible as an individual, and therefore as a troop, as a group, as a species, potentially. So this is used kind of as a proxy for human evolution, because it's really hard to study things like behavioral diversity through the fossil record all by itself. And so looking at something like this, you can kind of see how this could shed a light on the behavior of hominids in the past. Because if they lived in a space that had very strong seasonality, then it is likely that their behaviors were also varied, because they have to do different things at different times of the year, be able to migrate, be able to stay put, all these different things. So,
search for different food sources.
Absolutely. Yeah. And learn different tactics of preparing that food or gathering that food or what happened. So this was a pretty cool thing that's
making a stew.
When you say it, you're making a stew. When you say it, it kind of sounds like a well duh, but it's a really good basis for looking at other primate species, including humanoids, humans ourselves, and then also just other animals in general. If you have more environmental variability, then maybe you're looking out for more behavioral variability. And I think also it's important to remember that a lot of behavioral research is done over many, many years, but not all of it. And so if you're researching behavior in a species only during a winter, in a species that has intense environmental variability where they live, then maybe you should stick around for a couple calendar years and make sure you're there in different seasons, because you could see completely different behavior depending on that.
Yeah. If you only study grizzly bears in the winter,
You'd think they were really sleepy.
Yeah.
That's the laziest animal you ever seen.
But likewise, if you only studied grizzly bears in, let's say, California when they were here versus in Montana, you might see very different things, right?
Yes.
Because here in California, it doesn't get as cold. So they wouldn't even hibernate. So there you go. There's some behavioral variability.
What? I just think of bears as always hibernating. Are you telling me that if it's just warmer, they're not going to?
Nope.
Just because it's winter, they don't hibernate?
Yeah, that's what, the bears at zoos that are in temperate climates don't hibernate usually.
Yeah, there's probably a difference between diets too. I mean, eating berries in the spring and summer versus, trying to eat a lot of fatty fish or something as you get close to winter. It's going to vary seasonally depending on the needs of the animal.
Totally.
Absolutely.
And this though, there is a bit of chicken and egg in this.
It's always
idea.
the egg. Eggs
I know.
Eggs came way before chickens. Dinosaurs laid eggs. Eggs have been around a lot longer.
From the brain side of things, there's also which animals are going to stick around in different areas. So animals that have bigger brains, that have more interconnectedness, that they have greater networking within their brain, are potentially better generalists and better able to come up with more behaviors to handle a diverse environment. And so there's a bit of the hand-in-hand aspect of the evolutionary process, which, what is going to push from the birds that I studied to push birds to migrate or to stay in one place and take advantage of the resources that are in, hunker down and just stay in one place.
Adapt or perish,
Yeah, and we there are differences in the brains between specialists and generalists.
Yeah.
Migrant birds and non-migrant birds. So diverse environment versus a very plain environment.
See, where I
you're
think this
gonna-
would get really
What do
interesting.
you need? What do you need to live in a very boring place? Not much.
Yeah, if you take a chimp from a not very variable environment, from generations of a not variable environment, you stick them into a variable environment, what happens? How plastic is it? Like, how quickly can they
Could they adapt?
respond to the culture that they're in? And I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, very interesting question. Cool. Thank you, Blair. Oh, well. This is This Week in Science. We want to thank you for listening to TWIS. You are the reason that we do what we do every single week, bringing you up-to-date and down-to-earth views on science discoveries. And with your help, we can do even more. Together, we can bring a sane perspective to a world full of misinformation. Head to twis.org right now and choose your level of support. Be a part of bringing sanity and science to more people.
And we're back. You're listening to This Week in Science. And Justin was supposed to tell us more about orcas, but I guess we'll have to wait for that.
Justin doesn't care about the rundown. Dude,
Kiki, you have
serious.
some stories for us? He can go last.
I have stories. Of course I have stories. I kind of put Justin in there to see if he'll just stay.
The answer is no.
The answer is no. Let's talk about pain. The pain that comes from climbing a particular tree in Australia. There's a tree in Australia because Australia doesn't have enough things that can hurt you. They also have plants that can hurt you. The Australian stinging tree, otherwise known as gimpy stinging tree, is venomous.
I want to say I saw Steve Irwin get stung by this tree when I was a kid on his show.
You may have. And this tree, very similar to like stinging nettles that you might be familiar with. It's covered in little tiny needle-like hairs, trichomes, that when you touch the plant, they like a little needle, they get in under your skin and inject a load of plant venom, which is really not comfortable. Leads to pain, burning, itching that can last days, sometimes weeks, depending on how much of the venom ends up in your skin and how your body reacts to it. The tree, dendrocnide, means stinging tree. It is a member of the nettle family, found from the Northern Rivers region of New South Wales and Queensland through Gympie, Queensland. It's all over the place, not nice. And these researchers decided to check out what was going on with the chemical makeup of the venom to find out what was in it. And they thought that they'd find something fairly basic. And they were looking, but they're at first they're like, okay, in the trichomes, there's got to be histamine, acetylcholine, formic acid. They wanted to test all these things, but they didn't have that long-lasting effect. And so they said, well, maybe there's actually a neurotoxin involved. And they decided to look more closely there and found that there's a whole new class of plant neurotoxins now, little mini proteins that they have called gimpytides. And the gimpytides, of course, are named after the gimpy plant. But they are neurotoxins similar to the cone snail and venomous spiders.
Oh my God. Cone snails are very high on the pain index.
Yeah, and I have an issue calling it venom because I think of it as like, little fangs or
venom is injected.
It's
ingested. So this does sound like venom.
Yes, it's injected through these trichomes that are like little teeny tiny needles that inject the venom. plant venom. So not only do we have venomous spiders and cone snails, there is at least one, if not more, venomous plant in the world. It's got big fangs. Big fangs. Yes. What they're hoping, the neurotoxin works very similarly to other neurotoxins affecting ion channels, sodium channels in sensory neurons in the skin. So it's not actually due to the little tiny hairs getting stuck in the skin, but it's actually because the ion channel in the sensory neurons is getting changed permanently. And because of that change, the pain neurons just get turned on. And it's like constant burning pain. And by figuring out how it works, that they can hopefully use gimpy tides to develop treatments for people who accidentally or I don't know, on a dare decide to climb these trees. I mean, I'm
just trying to get a better view. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Yeah, that tree was gonna take me down the way that it did. Venom.
See, Australia, venom. Even the trees are trying to hurt you.
It's true.
Everything in Australia is trying to kill you.
Just one nice thing that's not trying to kill me. Yeah, okay. Moving on from venomous plants, let's talk about time.
Time? Rosemary or the passage wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff?
Oh, the wibbledy wobbledy timey wimey. How we perceive it. Time perception. How do we know how long time is? And we've talked before about how there are certain neurons in the brain that tick off periods of time and respond to certain events that can be like a little clock, a little ticker that keeps us going. We've talked before about how we have an internal clock, the circadian clock that dictates our day and all of our metabolism and makes our body run. And we have the master clock and lots of little clocks through our body. But that doesn't have to do with perception of time. How do you know when something has been a long time or a short time? And you maybe have a job that is repetitive and you're doing the same thing over and over, like pipetting, perhaps, Justin. Pipetting from one set of plates to another. And it's just repetitive and the time just seems to go by. Well, these researchers publishing in the Journal of Neuroscience really wanted to know what was happening in the brain. And so they did an fMRI study. First, they got a bunch of 18 people, not too many people. It's limited, but fMRI studies usually aren't too large in terms of their sample size. They showed people either a video clip, it's 5 seconds long, 50 times. So these people had to watch the same 5-second video 50 times, or they had to listen to white noise. That was like 5 seconds of white noise 50 times. And then, and this is kind of the entrainment to get the repetitive signal into the brain and to get the brain kind of warmed up to the sense of time this would be. Once they had done that, they asked the people to estimate how long the video clip was or how long the white noise was. And some people said that it was longer in duration or shorter in duration. After they did that, they did a test in which they played either a longer video clip or a shorter video clip. But they didn't tell them they changed the duration. And then they asked people to estimate how long the video was or how long the sound was. And they found that just everybody got it wrong. And there's a particular area of the brain that was called the where'd it go? The SMG, the super something gyrus. Look at me remembering brain things. The supramarginal gyrus. Here we go. They found, using fMRI, they found this supramarginal gyrus, which lit up, but it lit up less when people were really misjudging the time that they were supposed to be estimating. So what they think is that there's this area of the brain that contains time-sensing neurons, that those neurons tire out. Repetitive tasks tire out the neurons in this little part of your brain. So your brain clock gets tired, and you really should not use your brain as a judge of time. That's the take-home message here. Your brain is not good at judging time at all, so we should just stop trying. You're going to get it wrong.
Is that like I feel like that's highway hypnosis, right? It's just repetition, and you're just like, oh, I just left, but I'm home.
Right. Yeah, and so, the idea that they're hoping to get at some point in the future is like, maybe we can stimulate that area of the brain when people are doing long drives, repetitive tasks, something to keep those neurons fresh and not tired out and habituated, so that your sense of time either can fly by and you'll be able to have less time distortion in a negative sense and in a slowing sense, or or in the other direction, be able to control it so that tasks or fun times that you want to have, you can make them last longer.
But don't you think the fleeting nature of fun is part of what makes it desirable?
Oh, no. I agree with that. No. Absolutely.
No.
I feel like it'd be good for sleep. I would like when you hit snooze for it to feel like 2 hours. That would be great.
I would like that a lot. Yes. This after you hit the snooze button. Yeah, I slept for so much longer. Oh, it hasn't been that much longer, but I feel refreshed.
That's great.
It's great. Yeah. But basically this is another area of the brain which has a very distinct population of neurons that are involved in our perception of time. Now we know where they are. Can we manipulate them? Or what else can we learn about how they're integrated with other areas of the brain to really allow us to navigate through not only space, but time, which is what we do. We're time travelers.
We are, just in one direction. Yeah.
Yeah, more or less.
The manipulation of time thing can be interesting. I mean, I can absolutely see like, hey, if you take this pill, the next 8 hours will go by as if it was 2. Get on that long flight, and at the end you feel, actually, I think that wasn't so bad. But I have a hard time believing that you're just not a lethargic idiot that whole time. Like, what are you turning off in your brain where you're not paying attention, or you're just not registering that you're paying attention? I'd have to see it in action. I'd have to see the difference of somebody under this pill or whatever, under this condition. Hypersensitivity, or not hypersensitivity, but being like, okay, there's a lot going to happen in the next minute or in the next hour. You need to pay attention to all of it. Sounds like you're putting somebody on speed. It sounds like you're putting somebody on some, you know what I mean? Like that, isn't that what that is already? Like
those are the attention. You got to get a lot out of the next hour. Those are the attention enhancing drugs, the ones that affect the frontal cortex. Yeah. This group of neurons is a little bit different, though. The fact that when they get tired, time distorts for you.
If all it's going to do is replace an egg timer, I don't need it. I have an egg timer for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, our brain is absolutely tied into how we perceive time. But I want to know now, Justin.
Ooh, okay.
About those orcas. You said you were going to talk about it more. Let's talk now. Let's talk.
Okay.
You introduced it. Yeah.
The first half I introduced 7 different attacks where whales seem to be intentionally disabling boats and turning them around. So this is mostly taking place, at least it started off in the Gibraltar Strait, which is south of France, that sort of entrance to the Mediterranean between Europe and Africa. So in that area, the orca that are there are endangered, as they probably are in most places in the world, but they're very endangered. They are absolutely on the edge in this region. their main thing that has drawn them to this region in the past is bluefin tuna, which has been massively overfished in this area and is dwindling supply. There's 30 adult orca making up 5 pods of orca. 2 of those pods have already switched from hunting bluefin tuna to going after fish that were already caught on these long lines of the fisherman's net. So the fishermen pull up the line, not the nets, but the hook lines. They pull up the hook line and there's tuna head, tuna head, tuna head, tuna head. No body. Because 2 separate pods have figured out how to just take them from the fishermen instead of hunting. It's also hard to hunt because the noise is so great. The orca there have been sort of hounded in a couple ways. It's a shipping lane. It's a heavy fishing region. Plus, there are whale watchers who are coming out to do sightseeing of the orcas. And plus, fishermen chase orcas because they believe that the orcas are better at finding the bluefin tuna. So they will actually run if they see orca, they'll put their fishing boats across where the orca are, thinking that the tuna will be below. What happens then is they get caught and hit and snagged and cut by fishing line. Also, when they're going after the tuna that's already on the hook, that's also a very dangerous, very sometimes lethal, but usually just causing injury to the orca. So their food is scarce. The noise pollution is bad. Their ability to get food is also not just hampered, but they have all of these sort of challenges with getting cut and in all these fishing lines that are going back and forth across. Okay, so this is from The Guardian, is reporting that Jorn Selling, a marine biologist with FIRM, FIRMM, Whale Watching and Research Foundation, who's been there for 17 years studying whales, considers one theory that thanks to the COVID slowdown, there were months where there was no big game fishing, no whale watching, no people sailing, no fast ferries putting tourists around, fewer merchant ships were crossing through there.
It got quiet.
The entire area got quiet. So the pod that has been they think has been responsible for these boat attacks does not hunt off the line. They're one of the pods that still actually tries to hunt the bluefin, which means that their hunting probably greatly improved in the quiet. This is something, according to Selling, that they probably never experienced before. And so they might have gotten used to it in just a few months of being able to hear everything again for the first time. Then suddenly it starts up again. Now it's an annoyance. Now they identify, we didn't see as many boats and the noise went away. Maybe that's what it is. And what's interesting is a lot of these boats that were attacked are sailboats that also have engines that were under engine power at the time that the whales attacked. So even the sailboats that were part of this were under engine at the time. So that's very interesting. Another one is thinking that, this is Rocio Espada, I might be messing up the name, who works at the Marine Biology Laboratory at the University of Seville, has observed the migratory population of orca in the Gibraltar Straits for many, many years. Quoting, "For killer whales to take out a piece of fiberglass rudder is crazy. I've seen these orcas grow from babies. I know their life stories. I've never seen or heard of attacks. Sometimes they will bite the rudder to get dragged behind as a game, but never with enough force to break it." So for those who think this is just orcas at play, it does look like this is something that they started as play at one point, but this one pod seems to have taken it into a new direction. There's another...
I think it's interesting. The idea of play, we know with kids for development and for all sorts of species, play is learning.
Yes.
You play with things. How do kids learn how to become an engineer when they grow up? They start by taking things apart. They learn how it works. So play could have been learning about the rudder, seeing what it does to the boat, and learning.
This also just seems like more of nature taking over while everyone was inside from COVID and not wanting to go back, which is happening with the coyotes in my neighborhood. They're just like, no, we live here now. This is it.
Yeah, this is ours. Another thing is that it's a little bit interesting because one of the other things is that it could be fishermen have been attacking the fish. So these are protected animals, but both the whale watching boats, speedboats, ignore the protection distance orders, and fishermen who see the orca as competitors have actually tried to attack. There's reports, I guess, of them using like electric prods on them to scare them away, or throwing lit fuel at them, just being generally awful. There have been young orca, which they're having a hard time keeping them alive because the food sources are so rare. But young orca are not making it the normal rates. Some get caught in nets. Some actually get caught on the hooks. So it could be, there's this idea but that's been going on for decades. The big change has been everything got quiet.
It's a one big change. Yeah.
It went back to the orca, and immediately as things have started up, and immediately I'm saying, but it's interesting in the chain of events that they have listed out so far of these orca encounters, the first one starts with them just stopping a boat by the rudder. And then it seems to like escalate as they're trying out techniques. And turning the boats around. Turning the boats around. So like if we did find an intelligent life form on another planet, it could be a lot less intelligent than this, and we would say we need to clean room for our interaction, for anything going to probe. We need to make sure we do not interfere or interact negatively towards this mediocre species of even a bacteria that we find in space. Here's something on Earth that is learning, operating in a coordinated manner, and telling us, turn around, go that way. My favorite's the one where they got turned around in the middle of the night. They tried to turn the boat back around. New York were like, no, we're turning you around again. But we need to correct. No. Put him back again until they was like, fine, we're going back. We're going to stop fighting with the orca.
I can't wait to hear the actual scientific studies that come out of this, because it is going to be very interesting to find out, whether or not, we know orcas do hunt in packs. We do know they are coordinated in their actions. It's not random. So, what is their coordination? What do their communications seem to indicate? To actually go in and start studying, okay, let's go in with different kinds of boats and see what happens. Let's go in with different kinds of rudders and see what happens. Honestly, though, don't go out in a rowboat.
No, actually, what's interesting? No. What's interesting though is that small boats like that have never been affected really by orca. Orca never paid attention. There have been other reports of orca like coming up, being interested in boats, sort of bumping them, sort of checking out what's going on here. They don't do that to small personal.
For sure.
Yeah, but they don't seem to do that with personal craft. None of these attacks, or maybe we just never heard from the people.
Yeah,
we're in those boats. But so here's what I think is fascinating. So this is in that Gibraltar Strait in the south of Spain. The bluefin tuna are at this point heading up the coast of Portugal. This pod has, I believe, because I was also saying one of the researchers was saying that they believe it's all the same pod because it's unlikely that other pods spontaneously took up this behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the attacks have followed the tuna migration up the coast of Portugal to northwest Spain. So they assume it's the same pod that has traveled up there.
Are these tuna eating orcas, or are they seal eating orcas?
No, these are tuna is their primary.
Okay, so that's at least some good news. They're not mammal eaters, as far as we know. I mean, that is something very specific about different populations.
Until they get a taste for the blood.
But yeah, they may have connected not just sound to the humans, this noise pollution. They may have They may be connecting, of course, the scarcity of food. With humans, they're protecting their territory is what's taking place.
Mm-hmm. I think
interestingly, they haven't. Doesn't sound like they're turning boats around off the northwest coast. So, but it's more of an open sea situation. So there's maybe not as confined an area now that they're in, that they're no longer trying to turn boats back to the shore to protect this Gibraltar Strait. It's very fascinating. So we need to follow this if these attacks continue, because the last one was just within the last week. But next season, when they're back in the Gibraltar Strait, what's going to be really fascinating is because Orca have the ability to teach. And if one of these pods mingles with one of the other pods, or with another group that doesn't go back to the Gibraltar, if they meet other Orca elsewhere, and this behavior is learned, this could propagate. This could become a worldwide strategy of Orca.
If I may, I feel like it is much more likely that they spend their migration up and down hearing ship noise in the channels now that things are starting up again and all this kind of stuff. And they're going to be totally desensitized when they get back down. Because I think it's like, it's like you're listening to a movie on the TV and you like pause and then you go, fix something and then you come back and you turn on, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so loud. And then, but then later, a couple hours later, you're like, what did they say? And you crank it up and you crank it up and you crank it up and it doesn't seem so loud to you anymore. So I'm sure that's a possibility here. If they were used to it before, that they might get used to it again in their travels.
That's a great point. Plus, they're not getting food out of it. So like learned behaviors most likely get passed on because it's a good way to get food. It's a good strategy. If they don't get anything out of this strategy over time, if they're not getting more food, if the boats don't all go away, then maybe we just
don't know what they're getting yet. I mean, maybe it is getting rid of the humans. Maybe it is defending a territory against a different fish hunting animal.
Could be.
Yeah.
But I'm saying
that's what the science is for. We got to find out what they're after.
We should respect it as though this is first contact. We are definitely being sent a message. You can't get much more clear than the message of turn your boat around, go back than what we've gotten. I think we should respect it. I think they should shut down the Mediterranean bluefin tuna fishing.
Well, they should shut down the bluefin tuna thing anyway. I think bluefin tuna are percentage-wise based on original population. They're more scarce than Siberian tigers.
Yeah, they crashed the population there by overfishing.
So there's not a lot of bluefin tuna. So I feel like we should just cut that out anyway.
I think that's a great idea. Elsewhere, we're talking about ion channels or something or other. We had the California Channel Islands, which is not really a great transition, especially since we came after other stories in between. California Channel Islands off the coast of Los Angeles, California, have for the yacht-faring Southern Californians been a haven and is an interesting trove of archaeological, biological, paleontological richness. Has some actually important human sites in North America. These are islands off the coast, famously, or maybe not so much, were once home to pygmy mammoths. Pygmy mammoths, which is sort of I love the phrase. It sounds like
jumbo shrimp.
Also a giant mouse. So they went both ways on these islands. But they found a short-nosed bear fossil in a cave on the island. It was this one little bone. It was excavated in 1996, and it was thought to be a seal bone. And then it got looked at by an expert at some point. The observation suggested that, no, this looks like a bear toe. Way more like a bear toe than any kind of seal. And it was the first and only bear ever recorded on these islands. It was found in a strata that was dated over 13,000 years old. And it was kind of a mystery. Like, there's nothing else here. There's no other signs of bear that got here. So what kind of bear was it? They sent it to a couple of labs. One came back with the hit that it looked like a speckled bear from South America. And another had gotten some ancient DNA out of it that showed that it wasn't a South American bear. What they ended up doing is cross-referencing. It turns out the speckled bear of South America is actually a living relative of this short-nosed beast of a bear, which this is a
spectacled bear. Is that what you're talking about? Spectacled bear.
Yes, the speckled
Spectacled.
Spectacled.
They have markings that look like glasses.
They wear glasses. They have poor eyesight. But no, this is the ancestor.
My favorite bear.
So this bone is not the spectacled bear, but the ancestor of the spectacled.
Yes. So they got a hit for that looked close to that. But then it turns out, no, this is the reason they have is because this is the ancestor. This is the Arctodus simus. This is the extinct giant short-faced bear, which had a range from Alaska down into Mexico, weighed about 2,000 pounds, and had a very diverse set of environments. So we're talking about diverse environments before. There was some evidence that these bears ate, nothing but they were like almost, they're omnivores. They ate a lot of berries and stuff like this. Other assessments have said that these were just complete carnivores up in the Yukon. What's interesting here is they got an analysis from the bones that was enough to tell them that these giant short-faced bear had a diet of marine life almost entirely. So they were eating maybe seals or fish near the shores.
So this is related to what I just Googled because I was like, how'd they get there? So the Channel Islands is 23 miles from the mainland, is what I just Googled.
Yeah, it's not close. So maybe
it's swimmable for a bear.
Swimmable, maybe the ice.
Far though.
It's
I mean, I know polar bears swim a really good distance, but that's 23 miles. That's pretty far for a swim.
But if
the marathon of a swim.
Primarily seafood, then maybe they're good swimmers.
Now, back in those days, though, you could get really good seafood by walking to the coast off of California. Not anymore. 13,000 years ago, fish swam right up like no big deal. We're all over we're full. The ocean's full. We're gonna hang out over here near the wall because that's all that's left. So they had two theories they had to figure out. They had to figure out whether or not bears made it to the island and then died, or if the thing died and something else brought it to the island.
Oh, yeah.
Was it humans? Well, the bone was actually very much intact, which is apparently sort of weird once a human is carrying a bone around for any reason. They're usually doing so for some kind of a purpose, and they've repurposed it, and that's usually the case.
That was their pet bear.
But it's just the toe. There's the rest of the bear.
Fidget spinner.
Yeah.
Anyway, what the assessment they finally have they landed on, they think this is the best, that it was likely taken by like an eagle or a condor, big birds of prey that used to be a lot more common also in California. That would have probably preyed on the seafood left behind by the bear, what the bear didn't eat. And if the bear is living by the coast and the bear dies by the coast, it would get picked apart by these condors and eagles, who also likely spent time on the island.
And that would make more sense to me that a large soaring bird like a condor, and probably that long ago they were very large condors, probably ate a little, scavenged a little bear toe bone, and then
maybe carried it
out.
Back to some young on an island where it's nice and safe from other predators. And the other thing is because of where they found the bear, it is sort of into a cave a little bit. Normally, if you find a large predator animal in a cave, you find the whole thing. Other animals in caves, you might find bits and parts because a carnivore has dragged them in there. But when you find the carnivore, the whole thing's usually there. So, yeah, best estimate that it was flown in. And my last story, if there's time. Do we still have time?
Go quick, Lee.
Olduvai faithful. Some of the oldest remains of early human ancestors are from the Olduvai Gorge, Rift Valley setting, northern Tanzania, right? This is the Earth has been tearing apart, so we have all these nice layers. We can go back in human history. Hominid fossils and tools have been found, 1.8 million years old. There's this interesting stretch of dirt that's about that age, about 1.7 million years old, that was being investigated because it was extremely sandy. It's a 3 kilometer long layer of rock that's exposed that has just different geologic layer compared to everything else around it. They did some testing. This is Sistiaga is the lead author of this study that's in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences publication. Went to go analyze these sediments to see how landscapes had changed over time, sort of looking for a climate change thing. How have the plants differentiated? And there's a lab that you could take this to in the United States. Where is it? Well, it's somewhere in the States. That's all that matters right now. And they looked at this analysis and they found these lipids and these leftover bits that were in there. And they went, yeah, this isn't coming back as plants. And it happened to be the lab they took it to had also been studying Yellowstone. And what they did discover is, hey, this looks like exactly like the trace leftovers that you would expect to find from an extremophile that can't live in water below 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Or no, not 80 degrees. I'm sorry, 80 degrees Celsius. What is that? That's like 176 degrees Fahrenheit. This hot leftovers looks like it was from a bacteria that persisted, or an extremophile that persisted in boiling water, basically. It was just sub-boiling water. So if this holds up, and it looks like it does, because apparently this is one of those telltale signs. This is one of those pretty crazy evidence that and it makes sense because this is a splitting rift valley. You would expect there to be some tectonic activity. You would absolutely, is a type of area you would expect to see hot springs. And in this case, high temperature, extreme hot springs. So then not crazy idea that maybe because of the hot springs, you have these human settlements nearby. And if you have these human settlements nearby these hot springs, why not put a little food in there? Now, one of the things that it could have started, they think, this is still postulating. They don't have evidence. It's hard to find the evidence of behavior yet, but now they have a thing to look for. They're going to look to see if there's other human sites, search the grounds around other human sites now that they have this way of determining whether a hot spring was there in some of the soils, to see if there's other human sites near these types of hot springs. Because one of the things that they think could have happened is, the first time you see an animal that's fallen into this boiling water and you retrieve it out, and dang, that meat is pretty good. That's a different way. I've never tasted meat like this before. And it's very easy to digest. And it's very palatable too. And then you catch something, well, let's put it in there first. So this is the possibility. There's a potential that we have mankind started cooking food before they had fire.
Sous vide.
Stew before.
And it could have been
totally makes sense. Accidental, just soup. Happenstance. Yeah.
Could have been soup. You throw those roots in there. Yeah, they get cooked up too. And that's way easier to eat. Let's put everything in there. See if it's easier to eat. Put a rock in there, pull it out. Oh no, that didn't improve. All right, try something else. Just keep going until you've got yourself a nice menu to choose from.
Really, yeah, very interesting idea about how that would happen. Really, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, so far they just have the correlation of these human settlements being near this super, super hot spring.
Correlation,
like the idea.
Not causation, but it's hard to prove something like this, but it's an interesting idea.
It's hard to suss out the human behavior aspect of it so far, but they wouldn't, they've only just, this was sort of a fluke. A person who's finding, molecule evidence or couldn't find their plant molecule evidence, was finding this strange hit, and the lab that they brought it to, who specializes in this sort of thing, had also been studying Yellowstone, had also said, hey, this signature matches up almost identically to the remnants of extremophiles that we have found in the super hot springs in Yellowstone. So that was sort of some luck, to say the least. So So now we got to keep looking. What if this is a thing? Humans just like hot tubs. They went from hot tub spot to hot tub spot.
Why not? Oh my gosh. Nice hot tub at the end of a rough day, catch and prey, scavenging. Absolutely. It's good stuff. All right, we are coming down to the end of the show here, and I do have a letter from someone for our questions, and it's less of a science question, more of a philosophical question related to science and our stance on issues. So for our TWIS question of the week, the letter comes from our listener, Ashlynn Antrobus. Ashlynn writes in, what is TWIS's stance on the issue of transgender people existing? That's probably not the best wording for my question, but I'm struggling to word this in a way that keeps it in strictly a matter of science. On the July 29th episode, there was a discussion of barriers to entry. Presents were members of marginalized communities. In it, Blair talked about the impact on careers of raising a family, in which she described pregnancy and childbirth as what it means biologically to be a woman. I emailed her to point out that this ignores transgender men, non-binary people who are capable of these things, in addition to cisgender women who cannot have children or don't want any. Then on the September 5th episode, after Blair's story about the limb regenerative capabilities of anemones, there was discussion of the wish for humans to have that capability. And Justin pointed out that alcohol and caffeine could have deleterious effects on people experiencing pregnancy. The statement was perfect, but then he amended himself to less inclusive language by changing it to women experiencing pregnancy. So you can understand my concern. I wanted to know if you followed the lead of many organizations, or do you believe in the regressive idea that women are simply walking uteruses? I've been a fan of TWIS for a very long time, but need to know if you're going to be denying the experiences of my friends, my wife, and myself. So I just want to address this very quickly, and we can talk about the biology, the science, the state, just from the top, though. I want to say, in everything that we do not want to deny any living person their personal experiences. Those experiences are yours, are theirs, and we do not want to deny anything. And so if any language that has come out of our show has given that impression, that was not our intent. Now, intent does not necessarily this is a live show, and sometimes we use words that don't reflect the things that we believe in the best way. So I just want to start the conversation there. But then there's also the biologically what it means to be a woman. We can go to the definitions of what that is, and culturally this has become a very hot point for conversation over the last few years. It's been a long time coming, and I'm glad it is a massive conversation. Just in the last week, we see J.K. Rowling releasing a book with, there's a lot of misrepresentation in the world.
I think that's exactly what this is about too, is just, I wish that this had been part of the dialogue for longer, but it's still kind of new. And I appreciate people's patience as we learn to incorporate the right language when we're talking off the cuff. And I think that, 5 years ago, I sometimes messed up when I was talking about pronouns, because that was kind of a newer conversation. And, I'm not perfect. I'm trying to get better. I'm still not perfect. And this is something that I think I've struggled with also, because I talk about, for example, temperature-dependent sex determination, and to use the word sex instead of gender is the right thing to do, because gender is related to identity and sex is related to plumbing. So it's, it has to do. There's lots of delicate language.
It's related to the genetic.
The Supreme Court ruled against you. The Supreme Court ruled against you.
Right. No, but
there's the social construct
when we're
versus
teaching science. Yeah. There are specific words that mean specific things. And so you have to be very deliberate. And I think that this is the tough work that we have to do. And I did get that email, and I have been doing a lot of my own research. I wanted to be able to respond and kind of be thoughtful in my response. And so Ashlynn, I look forward to writing something for you in the next week or so, but I appreciate the feedback because it did push me to do some of my own learning there, because I want to make sure that my language is correct and inclusive, and also scientifically accurate, because that's what we want to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm a little bit of a iceberg from a foregone era, so I don't have the prejudiced iceberg thing. I have this early form of woke before that was a thing people said. And my training on gender was that you didn't being like, for instance, this is the early stages. Being a lesbian didn't make you a man was a thing, right? Like, you didn't call lesbians men because they were like, that would be offensive. They're women who like women. That's just fine. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And that was sort of, so if a woman wants to be like him, dress like him, or has that's fine. It can still be a woman who wants to do all of those things. That was the self-empowerment, regardless of what your gender, which was binary, regardless of what your gender is, you could live your life however you felt best suited you. And that was fine. You still had gender, and it didn't matter how you were expressing. But now that's the part that I've had a really hard time accepting. Like, is this a wave of people making an ask of gender? And do they represent all of their community? Because it feels like if I wanted to wear a dress, I shouldn't be calling myself a woman. If you've gone through the surgeries, does it still matter that how you were born, or should it not matter that you were born that way and you can be a man with all of this accoutrement? Like
that's where the pronoun conversation comes from, right? It's up to you.
It is.
It's up to you.
It's a personal choice, and it's not on anyone else to tell you what you are.
Right. But why not? Why do you have to disown one to have the other? Is the thing that I just found like counterintuitive. It almost is like I'm going to give up the fight for saying a man can have a vagina. You know, like why did that fight just get why did that get given up? Why can't being born as the stamp on your birth certificate still own anything else that comes? You still be part of that. Because then
it depends on what you want, and if you, if it's misstamped because there's a misunderstanding, right?
But to me, it sounds like surrender. To me, it sounds like surrender. No, it does. It says that a man can't XYZ. Then you have to change your pronoun and have a third definition for a man can do however he wants, as a woman can do however they want. And still, that's how you really break that gender wall, is you stay men and women and live it out however you like. That's been my pushback.
But I think you're talking about two things. You're talking about like your desires as a person versus your identity, which are two completely different things.
Yeah.
I don't.
These are completely
different things.
You have the person you want to be with, and the life you want to live, and the things you want to wear, and you have what you feel you are.
But then you're stereotyping. Identity. But by choosing to say, I feel like I'm this, you're now defining, if I want to live like a woman and I change my body, now I've defined what a woman is. That's ridiculous. That's what I'm saying. That makes no sense. What we need to do is I just cursed on the air. I got passionate. Forget those definitions.
After show. No.
You can define yourself however you want, but you're still following in to the iceberg prejudice of what those stereotypes are when you do that, is what I'm saying. Why are you still following a stereotype as you say you're walking away from the stereotype? You're just bringing the stereotype full circle.
I appreciate that clarification of it, because I think what it comes down to when I imagine it, I've always imagined the messiness of biology, and we like to have our binary sexes
to
categorize a man and a woman, and we just we've liked to categorize it like that. And we can justify it, rationalize it by saying, well, the biological definition of female is the one who's able to carry the offspring, or reproduce, hold the offspring. And then a woman is an adult female. You can go by those definitions. But when it comes down to it, it's a spectrum, and everything is this. There might be the extremes where it's exact, exactly by that definition at one end or the other, but everything in the middle is messy and everything else, and so you have multiple chromosomes, multiple hormones, and I think it's a very interesting point. We assign these things, but biology is messy. We try and we categorize. We create species when we don't even really know what species are. Humans we're trying to figure it out.
Random genre talk in the chat room says we should invite a trans person as a guest to better explain. Yeah, please, because I don't know if a transgender man or woman is trying to be a chauvinist or have male privilege or have I don't know why they're clinging on to the thing that they're supposed to be breaking, and that's why
they're not necessarily trying to break anything.
No, break the mold to have their own definition. But my thing is it's like skin lightening creams and hair straighteners that became very popular when African Americans tried to integrate more into white society. It's why do you have to? I don't like the idea.
Why do we have to?
I think just
changing the definition to fit into another definition. It just doesn't.
Just a thought, though, Justin. I think that part of this comes from the fact that you haven't been misgendered, right? And so I think part of it is that if you spend your life misgendered, being called the wrong pronoun, being called the opposite of what you identify as, then it makes you want to push to make it very clear what you want to be called, because every time somebody misgenders you, it hurts.
And by appreciating what people want to be called, by appreciating and accepting and acknowledging that and trying to be as inclusive as possible, what we can do on this show moving forward is make sure that everyone feels comfortable. And everyone feels welcome. And that is all that
never our intention is to push somebody to a margin on this show.
No. And we always we want to learn. And if we're getting it wrong, we need to be told. So we do invite people to let us know. If they're Fada's saying you have a friend who's good on these subjects. Could be great. I don't know. The thing is, I don't know that it's necessarily that the social politics conversation is necessarily the place on this show. I do want to learn these things, and we do need to do more research to gain better understanding. But as a science program, our intent is to talk about things from the scientific perspective. And if as we're muddling our way through, we misuse a word, it is not our intent, and we will do the best that we can to use the most inclusive language that we can. But our intent is to communicate science.
Yeah, and I will stand by women have the babies in the human race. I don't think that should be extreme. I don't understand why it is.
Oh, but no, it's and if so, a trans woman could have been misgendered as a male at birth, but is a woman because they self-identify as a woman. So, and so they could potentially, if they have all of the plumbing, or if they go through hormone treatments or whatever is needed, they could potentially have a child, bear a child. So a woman is a woman.
Also,
Transgender women are women. Cisgender women are women. Like it's inclusive.
And transgender men can have babies.
And transgender men can have babies. Exactly.
Messy. But if we're talking about, I think for example, like the conversation that sparked the beginning of this, I was talking about something that I should be more exact with my words and say that the majority of women are capable of having babies, and that might be part of their career path. And that is the barrier. Yeah. Because also not all women who can have babies want to have babies. Not all women who are born women can have babies. So that is part of the, if you want to be careful with your language, it takes extra words. Which prevents you from marginalizing people. So it takes practice.
Yeah, the practice, and I don't want to make mistakes, but I think since this is not, this is an evolving understanding, we probably will. And we're going to make mistakes in all sorts of things. But it's emails like this that keep us honest and keep us thinking about these things so that we can do better. So thank you so much for writing the letter and helping us start this conversation here with you. I think that brings us to the end of the show. Little tough conversation for the end of the show there.
And I cursed on the show. That's so done.
Yeah, it's for the YouTubes, but it's not going to be in the podcast. Okay. Oh, yeah. We have made it to the end of the show. Thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to shout out now to Fada. Thank you for your help with social media and with show notes. Gord, thank you for manning the chat room. Identity4, thank you for recording the show. And I'd like to thank the Burroughs Welcome Fund and our Patreon sponsors for their generous support. Thank you to Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, John Scioli, Guillaume, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Maddie Perrin, Gaurav Sharma, Josiah Zahner, Mike Shoemaker, Sarah Forfar, Donald Mundis, Gerald Sorrells, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fred S104, Corinne Benton, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Ben Bignell, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Joshua Fury, Sean and Nina Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Gene Tellier, Steve Leisman, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard, Brendan Minish, Melizond, Johnny Gridley, Flying Out, Richard Porter, Christopher Dreyer, Mark Massaros, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Robert, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Matt Sutter, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Sloth, Jim DePoe, Sarah Chavis, Alex Wilson, John Ratnaswamy, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Kosti Ranke, Matthew Litwin, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Stanton, Paul Disney, Patrick Pecoraro, Ben Rothig, Gary S. Ed Dyer, Tony Steele, Ulysses Adkins, Brian Condren, Jason Roberts, and Dave Friedel. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if you are interested in supporting us on Patreon, you can find information at twis.org. Click the Patreon link. On next week's show, we will be speaking with Dr. Kevin Croker about dark energy and geodes. I got us an interview. We're going to make this happen. Yes.
Yeah, we'll be back with that interview, 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live from our YouTube and Facebook channels and from twis.org/live.
Hey, do you want to listen to us as a podcast? Just search for This Week in Science, wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, go ahead and just send some of that stuff through the internet to your friends. Get them to subscribe too.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to other stories will be available on our website, www.twis.org, and you can also sign up for our newsletter.
Hey, do you want to shout at us directly? Email Kirsten at kirsten@thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminion@gmail.com, or me, Blair, at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email might end up inside an orca's mouth. I don't know.
You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIScience, at Dr. Kiki, at JacksonFly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views. But I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought. And I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
Snek. It looks like the Snek is doing... Oh, Blair can't hear me. That snake looks like it's its own neck-warming scarf. Ooh. Is that a giant ground sloth? Drink all the coffee you need or that you have, Carol Ann. Get your copious coffee amounts, everyone. Our conversation at the end of the show will likely be edited down a little bit for the podcast version, as it did go off the rails slightly, but I'm glad that we started having that conversation. Oh, good! It's backwards. There we go. There's our new frog. Oh, Identity 4 is now Sir Professor Dr. Awesome Sauce. From now on, Identity 4 is Sir Professor Dr. Awesome Sauce.
I'm sorry, were you talking to me? My headphones were off because I had to go
I know. I was talking and I realized you couldn't hear, and that's fine.
So I'm reaching out about calendar pricing this week. And
Awesome.
this will be ready by next week so that we can start taking pre-orders. hopefully by
Woohoo. Okay, great.
I'll be done
Pre-orders for calendars, everyone. Do you need your 2021 calendar?
I hope we need a 2021 calendar.
Or have we given up?
We have a calendar.
2021's calendar is only going to March. Sorry, folks. That's all she wrote.
No, it's the opposite. It starts in August because that's when we're going to have a vaccine.
Yeah.
Oh, Thunder Beaver, you like that was your favorite part of the show. Awesome. More of those real conversations, huh? I don't know. I keep coming down to the Depeche Mode song, right? People are people, so why should it be? You and I should get along so awfully. Boom, boom, boom.
And by the way, I don't know if I stated it articulately enough. I understand. I am out of line with the current affect in culture on this issue. I understand that I'm out of line, and I'm just trying to apologize, at the same time stating that where I am coming from is not a place of hate or intentional disparity,
No.
but that I have this this somewhere in between what's been fought against and what was the initial action taken. I'm sort of stuck there on that in between of acknowledging anybody can mix, and I use the pronouns, the nouns, is it nouns, pronouns? What are they? As prescribed to me when I'm told this is how this person. I use them, but I still don't have full comprehension on what is the current thing. Education, absolutely.
Education. I mean, that's.
I do still have an innate
Our
resistance
language
to
is
it, but for a
based
very
in
different
habit.
reason.
Our language is based in habit, so it's like breaking a habit when you have to learn new ways of talking about things. It takes time.
Yeah, and Thunder Beaver did clarify the part of the show that he really liked was the F-bomb.
Yeah, thank you.
It wasn't the conversation we were having, it was
No.
the F-bomb.
It's so hot.
Blair-
are you hearing an echo, or is this okay?
You're good.
You're good, no echo.
I had to take my headphones off because it's so hot. My cans, they were so hot.
Yeah, acknowledging social identities, absolutely, Gaurav. We need to do that, and we are going to try to do that. I think it's very interesting when we talk about sexual reproduction. We talk about issues that have to do with the biology of sexes and sometimes even genders, and
It's
the wording has to be very accurate these days.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely it's a push-pull, because in order to be a good science communicator, you want to relate things to humans. But gender identity is not something that happens by our allowances outside, right? So it's different. So even though, we spend all this time talking about how humans are animals and we're just like them and all this kind of stuff, we have this very different framework for this specific thing. And so I think that's where it's been difficult for me to find the right words and learn the right words and kind of push in the right direction, because there's these two conflicting things. You want to relate to humans, but humans.
So here's an example. Here's an example.
Complicated.
Here's an example. We did a study of 100 women across the United States testing how they react to this drug. And we compared that with a study of 100 men. Except the 100 women were men who identify as women. There's going to be differences that are not identity alone. I'm not saying that these things are choice. I get that it's not a choice that's made, that this is discovery of what your true identity is. But if you were doing a scientific study of women, and it was men who identify as women were the only ones that you chose for this study, you're skewing a result.
And that is as part of the argument of why we need to include more female animals in animal studies. Why in drug studies, like for instance, the COVID vaccines that are being studied, we want to have men, we want to have women, we want to have white people, we want to have Black, Indigenous people of color, we want to have transgender, we want to have, we want as the broadest spectrum and the largest number of each of all the people and definitions, so that we can find out if there are places where things go wrong.
Yes. So when it comes to the world of science, I say it should remain largely binary when you're not doing a social study. Now, if you're talking about the census needs to be opened up. Absolutely. But if you're talking about how a drug interacts with body chemistry, that's a different. I think that's a different issue. So yeah, there's some places where the social identity won't matter. Like if you say we've studied 1,000 Americans. And all of those Americans were, like you say, all Caucasian or all Indigenous. It's not really representing all Americans in the study. So sometimes you do have to go down into those details to know what you're talking about is effective and actually matches.
Yeah, what's representative? What's not? Like you had no idea that my cat was pushing me off the chair this entire show. No idea until I tell you.
Caroline,
how much in life is perceptions? What?
Didn't notice the F-bomb that I dropped. Yeah, I think I did it and covered it up pretty dramatically.
It was pretty dramatic.
I said, I don't know how far it got out. I don't know.
Oh, it got pretty far out.
Did it get all the way out there? Okay.
We were talking before the show, and Blair was saying that we should have a TWIS After Dark episode where all the bad words, where we're allowed to say whatever we want. That would be a different show, maybe. I mean, imagine the words that are actually in my head.
Although somebody will have to sit me down one day and absolutely explain to me why it is not submitting or surrendering in self-identifying with a stereotype. Does it
I think
change
before
the stereotype, or does
down...
it let it remain intact? Is my question. Is it really challenging it, or is it saying, yeah, that stereotype is correct, and now, but here's how I want to be included in that stereotype? It's tricky still for me on those grounds to really suss out what the objective is. And I know the objective is coming from what Blair was talking about, the ostracization and social acceptance, and this is a community that is coming up with its own terminology, so that should be acknowledged. I just like from the outside would want to have taken a more aggressive action the other direction, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe what it is it's little steps toward, instead of breaking down gender stereotypes and suddenly, just not really having that be a thing at all. Maybe it's just slowly start including different awarenesses of people. Suddenly we have an awareness of non-binary that was never an awareness before. Suddenly we have an awareness of transgender. I mean, it's amazing that the education is happening on a cultural level in a way that never used to be talked about before, and it's wonderful. And so maybe in order for the stereotypes to really be broken down in the end, it's maybe a slow progression of small acceptances. Oh, that's just a thought.
Yeah.
Little tiny things.
Do you want to check out my art some more?
TWIS swim. Yeah, more. Do you have a halibut? Just for the halibut?
Just for the halibut. There's the
Identity
halibut.
Dr. What was it that you wanted to be called? There's the halibut.
Dr. something awesome something.
Yes. Sir Professor Dr. Awesome Sauce. He's not interested in having the TWIS After Dark. You don't like, but he says, bad idea. No. Hornbill?
No.
What is that one? That's a
shoebill.
Shoebill. Thank you. That I said I got the bill right.
Devil bird.
And I know this is going to sound crass and totally as if I've missed the point of the previous conversation, which it hasn't. But I would like to self-identify as a doctor. I just would.
Started with an A. Look at me, Miss the.
I mean, they're very closely related.
Showing already. What? It is a nice scarf.
It's a green tree python. Very close. Here's my extinct animal.
Snek. I know this one. I got this one right. Giant ground sloth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, great question. When you do the coloring now, do you wear the glasses?
No, not usually, because they're really hard to use inside the glasses.
Do you look at the colors ahead of time with the glasses and then do the coloring?
So you can see some of it here, but it's just like the very first calendar I did. I do little checks of color on the sheet to compare and contrast, because when they're together, I can tell a little bit better.
Compared that contrast.
But I also arranged here. Let's see if I can
the contrast.
I can show art. I have art to show. Okay.
I arranged the colored pencils in order of color, and I asked to be proofread, basically.
Is this new art?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So I arrange all of the pencils, and then I know where to pull from.
Ooh. You've done this in Denmark?
Yeah.
What is that? A mermaid sea dragon horse?
So this is actually
What is? It's got big fangs.
Yes. So this is actually borrowed. This image was found on a coin in Norfolk. It's an ancient Celtic coin.
Oh, really?
Of the Norfolk wolf. And then I grabbed another figure from a Celtic coin, I think in Spain or France. I think it's French. French Celtic coin is the writer, and I kind of put them together.
Is that just paint?
No, it's got some a little bit of height to it.
Yeah, would you put stuff under it?
Oh yeah, of course.
It's all sorts of. It's really cool, Justin. I love it. You're welcome. Yes, identity 4. It has breasts.
Does it? I didn't notice. Are they obvious? Can you see them? I could make them bigger if you can't see them.
Yes.
It was just for the base to connect the paints to the canvas, the gesso, whatever it is. No, that's a combination of medium that's used to thicken paint, as well as I paint with I use caulk.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I use my caulk to make all of the.
Mm-hmm. Knew that was coming.
Uh-huh.
Carol Ann said I was a unicorn for being a colorblind woman. Yes, you're more likely to be born with 11 toes than to be born a colorblind female. That's my favorite one.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So have you been a unicorn for Halloween yet?
No.
You could be a unicorn.
It's because it's every day, Kiki.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it.
Unicorn every day. Sadie, what are you
Oh, I thought you meant it was Halloween every day.
Oh, no, I'm a unicorn every day.
Oh, okay. Every day is Halloween.
Come here. Sadie's bothered because Brian left.
Oh, poor puppies. Poor puppies. I would like to apologize to people who are here who were going to go to a get-together for Ed on Sunday with the fires and everything that was going on. I went to
You might not have been able to be near your house. Those fires came right up to Portland.
They were close to Portland. I did go to somebody else's house for the weekend because they had a better HVAC system than I do here in my house. And so until we got 2-inch painter's tape and were able to tape up the whole inside of the house.
No, the entire city of Portland was on evacuation warning alert. Like they were like, be ready to go.
It was ready. Yeah, there was a lot. So I got distracted and then I was exhausted and I woke up at like 11:30 to see messages about, are we meeting? What's going on? What's happening? And I am so sorry because that's all on me that I missed getting the link out. And I know a few people did get together on Science Island, but if people would like to try again this weekend,
yes, absolutely.
I'm up for trying again, and
absolutely.
I'd love to do that. Good night, Noodles. Noodles left. I missed it.
Yes, I did see the police body cam footage of the college house party. So police officer shows up to a party and where's it? Miami. I think it was. And according to Sharma there in the chat room. And hey, you're only supposed to have 10 people in the house at a time. It looks like you have a bigger gathering. How big is it? Yeah, it's probably 20 people here. Okay. So this is weird. I haven't had the officers talking. I haven't had this happen before, but it came up on my my screen here that you have COVID.
It was a COVID quarantine house?
No, look. And he goes, so are you supposed to be quarantined? Yeah, that's why I'm staying home. Okay, when was this? A week ago that he tested positive. Okay, and you have 20 people in your house right now. Well, yeah, because I'm on quarantine.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
What? Oh,
Darwin in action.
Well, and the thing I really liked about that is I heard about that on the Daily Show.
They
and
stayed
of course,
home.
Trevor Noah, because we're on the after show, I can say. Trevor Noah promote other shows. He was like, oh, so that's what it's like for a police officer to talk to
interact with a white person breaking the law. Yeah.
He's like, oh, yeah, you shouldn't do this.
No, it's like, well, it looks like you're committing a crime. I'd just like to point that out, and I'll be on my way.
So many levels. This was, wow, what a story. Wow. I do have to watch the video. I haven't seen it or heard about it. And all of his roommates are positive too. And they're like, yeah, we'll have a party and invite some people over.
We'll be
great.
At home.
We'll be at home. It'll be fine. Did they not think for 1 second that they could transmit?
They all hate their families that they're going to go home to. This must be what it is.
They feel,
hey, and you guys also want to get your inheritances a little early? Got an idea. So I'll get together and then we'll go visit the family over the weekend.
Ooh, ouch. Crazy. Hi, Corey. I see Corey over on Facebook. Who is it? Carol Ann was saying she has a bestie who is evacuated outside of Medford. Doesn't think they'll have a house to go back to. Oh, that's awful. Yeah, so much of that around here. Yes, and random genre talk. Better or worse, there is another country right now with a lot of police issues. We're bad. We're not the worst. We're not the most authoritarian yet.
Identity 4 asks an
Not yet.
important question in one of the chat rooms here. It says, asks, why are we so dumb? Well,
let's answer this
We
question.
have too many safeguards in place, so there's no natural selection anymore.
So,
not as many Darwin Award winners.
Yeah. Modern medicine has allowed people to be dumb and survive.
Seriously, all of our laws are about protecting people from their own stupidity. I love people. I love people. My t-shirt.
Random genre talk. If you feel better or worse, there is another country right now with a lot of police issues. Okay, random genre. I will take the bait. What country is that? Oh my goodness.
So anyway, that was just my little comment, t-shirt comment. Yeah. Who's we? Yeah, who's we? Don't talk about. I think our audience here is very intelligent. We have the best, smartest, most amazing, kind, compassionate, thoughtful, curious, incredible audience. We have the best audience.
Oh yeah, by the way, whenever I'm making fun of humans, understand you are not included. I know you may self-identify as a human, but because you're listening to this show, I know you're better than that.
Mm-hmm.
But we are included.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Ooh. Talk Like a Pirate Day is coming up this weekend.
Ooh.
Arr.
Also, I noticed not this month, next month, October 3rd is Virus Appreciation Day.
Okay.
And I'm having issues with this holiday.
I didn't know.
Wait, you said that too soon. I didn't get to do my pirate joke. Do you know what a pirate's favorite letter is?
You're supposed to say "arr."
Arr.
No, it's the letter P, because without it, they'd just be irate.
Oh. That's not the one I know. The one I know is what's a pirate's favorite letter?
Arr.
R. You'd think it'd be the R, but it'd actually be the C.
The C.
Very nice.
Oh yeah, Carol Ann knows that one.
Corey, yes, we are in an inversion weather situation with the smoke, and the smoke is not going through the inversion layer, and it's kind of getting stuck, and none of the weather forecasts are doing what are accurate, because the weather forecasts are based on higher up altitude stuff that's not working because of the smoke. So we're like 10 degrees cooler here than we should be right now. And yeah, a lot of things aren't happening the way they should be. Silly inversion layers, because the heat heated things up and then it's cooler. It's all, yeah. We've had orange sky.
Michael Murch wants to know if we're reading the comment thread, and we are.
We are. That's what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Gaurav, you want more dad jokes? What do you call a fish with no eyes? Fish.
Fish.
What do you call a deer with no eyes?
What?
No idea?
Hey,
what do you call a deer with no eyes and no legs?
What?
Still no idea.
That's a good one.
That was good.
Those are fine.
That is good. Oh my
Actually,
goodness.
the only joke that I know. So I'm out.
You're out.
I gave all
Ew.
my material already. That was it. Got nothing more.
Hey, what's brown and sticky?
A stick.
That's my favorite joke. That is my all-time favorite joke.
Oh, Eric in Alaska. What did the fish say when it hit the concrete wall?
Damn. I know. Don't try the animal jokes with me.
Okay.
Oh, random genre
Okay.
talk. Justin is Jeff Goldblum sometimes. It's true.
He's my uncle.
No, he's
Fun
not.
fact. A lot of people don't realize that about it. Jeff Goldblum is my uncle.
If I want to tell dad jokes, I have to actually look them up because I can't remember jokes at all.
You know, I'm kind
I
of bad.
forget all jokes. I cannot keep them in my mind, except for my one kind of risque joke.
Oh, you can't tell in the air.
Oh, maybe I can.
Oh, what is it?
What did the battery say to the bag of corn chips? I'm ever ready if you're free to lay.
That is risque.
Risque. Let me tell you my battery joke, okay?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Eat up.
Eat up who?
Ew.
That's a good one.
Ooh, I have
Okay.
3 jokes now.
How many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh?
I don't know.
8?
10 tickles.
10 tickles.
How did I miss that?
Oh my god. Here, I bet I can find science jokes. No. That's not a joke. These are just stupid memes. They're not funny. Hold on. Oh, did you hear oxygen went on a date with potassium?
What happened?
It went okay.
Oh, I like that a lot.
If Silver Surfer and Iron Man team up, they'd be alloys. The optimist sees the glass half full. The pessimist sees the glass half empty. The chemist sees the glass completely full, half with liquid, half with air. What?
Ooh, that's a good one.
The chat room is now all joke setups.
Awesome.
Corey, why is it always hotter in the corners of a room? Because it's 90 degrees.
Oh my god. I love
What? Very good. Yeah. Did you hear about the physicist who accidentally froze himself to absolute zero? He's okay now.
I love that.
I like setups for jokes. Let me find more. A photon checks into a hotel and is asked if he needs any help with his luggage. He says, "No, I'm traveling light." But
Why is a fish easy to weigh?
Why?
Because they have
it has
scales
its own
already?
Scales, yeah.
Why is organic chemistry difficult?
Why?
No.
Those who study it have all kinds of trouble.
That's a good one. Oh yeah. What did the buffalo say to his son when he went away?
The buffalo?
Yeah. Bye, son.
Bison. What did Gregor Mendel say when he founded genetics?
What?
Woo pee. Whoopee.
I like it. Oh my god, I like that a lot. Woo pee.
Woo pee. Anyone know any jokes about sodium?
Nah,
Nah. There you go.
couldn't help it.
Where was the first French fry made? This is from Bark 32.
When?
In Greece.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
We all need bad
Some
jokes.
Laughter. Some
More, yes, some laughter. It's nice. Carol Ann says she needs more coffee to laugh at these jokes. Come on. What is the difference between the mafia and the government?
What?
The mafia is organized.
Ooh, topical.
Not a science joke. Funny. But funny. Yeah, puns do make the world go round. Puns make me very happy. They do. Little ways to find the world amusing and enjoyable. Okay, so next week, huh? We have another show?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Blair's working on the calendar, so hopefully we'll get pre-orders for the calendar out next week. Yeah, send us your dad jokes. I like our orchestrated. That's right. That pun. It was good. Yeah, send us your science jokes, your science puns. That'll be fun. We don't even need to have a science question. Maybe the science question could be a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Something good.
Yep.
It has been fun. Thank you, Corey. Everyone. Is it time to say good morning, good night?
Yeah. Say good night, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say good morning, Justin.
Good morning, Justin.
Good
night, Kiki.
Kiki.
Good night, everyone. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you for joining the fun, enjoying the science. We hope you enjoyed the show and the jokes. Maybe you didn't enjoy them.
Get out of here.
Maybe you did enjoy them. You just don't like to admit it. But I hope you have a wonderful week full of science. Identity 4 asked Blair if Blair is still sending art to patrons.
It's on the way.
It's on the way, Identity. It's on the way. All right.
I braved the post office in a pandemic for you.
She did. All right, everyone. Take care, and we will see you in a week. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay sciencey.